Chairman, we are now live.
Okay, members, it's dead on 6 o'clock. Obviously, we were just holding back because we seem to be missing 2 members, but I think it's appropriate we make a start. Good evening and welcome everyone to this special meeting of Western Area Planning Committee of West Berks Council. Other members, I'm obviously Philip Barnett, the Chairman of Western Area Planning Committee, and other members that are assisting me tonight. To my left is Councillor Denise Gaines, Councillor Anthony Amasraj, Councillor Tony Vickers, Councillor Clive Hooker, and Councillor Adrian Abbs. The following officers to advise and support the meeting are as follows. To my right, Deborah Inston, the Team Manager of Development Control. Matthew Shepherd, Senior Planning Officer, who will be presenting the application, over to my right. Thea Nolly, my Legal Advisor, to my left. Sam Chilverton is the Clerk, over the far left. And also to my rear, to the left, is Ben Ryan, who will be Zoom host. Now, I gather Sam Robbins, the Economy Manager, is due to be here. Is he here? No? Not at the moment. Okay. Well, let's hope he will attend at some stage, because I'm sure several questions will be in his direction. Before we start this evening's meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. And I would also might just like to add, there's obviously several members of the public here tonight, and it would be appropriate that to make sure that if there is anything that you feel unhappy with or you were wishing to comment on, please don't interrupt any presentation, because I think it's unfair on the person that's given the presentation. Members across the chamber might not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements we endeavour to always be respectful of other views. Now, regarding safety matters, if we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed regarding the safe emergency exit route, which are marked across the doors, and then obviously exit to the appropriate assembly point, which is in the car park in Dolphin Pub. Nevertheless, if a lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instruction from officers. We will then adjourn the meeting at such time it is safe to proceed. Okay, now, obviously, members, this evening is being devoted to one application. So I will be very much in your hands if you feel appropriately at some stage that you wish to have a break, although we've obviously got the whole evening to discuss the application. At this point, do members have any questions about the way that the meeting will be conducted, and can I therefore proceed?
Yes, Chairman, it's really a point of order, really. The paperwork we've been provided with is now acknowledged to contain certain actual errors in it, which I don't see corrected in the update sheet. But the economics officer isn't here when the reason he should be here is because one of those errors is basically affects him. And we also don't seem to have corrected the paperwork that still says 7 stories when we in fact know it's 8. I was rather hoping we would have correct paperwork to go with and to begin with this evening. Sorry, I got distracted there. I was kind of thinking this, especially as the whole thing talks about this being a district-wide effect, this development, that we actually move this directly up to district planning rather than Western Area Planning. But I'm not sure if that's possible, whether it could be seconded, whether we can do it now or not. So over to you, Chairman, sorry.
I think the last point that you just mentioned is relevant at the point when we get to the debate anyway, in relationship to the economy, not economic, but economy manager. One would hope that that individual will attend at some stage, so that they would answer that point that you raised. In regarding the other matter, I think I'm going to turn to Deborah to answer it.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the story, in the update report,
Does it say it somewhere?
yes.
Sorry.
In the update report, it's reference to stories within report, and it states that the report erroneously states that the height of the development would be 7 stories at its highest point, whereas the highest block in the proposed development is in fact 8 stories tall, and that's part of Block S.
Yes, it is.
Okay, right. Continue on. Is that a point of procedure, Councillor?
I'm just informing you, Chairman, Councillor Wollaston is now with us and Councillor Dick is held up in traffic. It's bad this evening, as you know. And of course, if we start the proceedings, he won't be able to take part. So he's 2-3 minutes away. I just thought I'd inform you.
Okay. I don't know the position regarding Councillor Foote, but we did, we obviously made this specifically at 6 o'clock on the account that we wanted to make sure members had adequate time during this evening. Is Councillor Foote attending? And furthermore, all I would say is that I think it's appropriate that when you need to be at a certain place on a certain time, you allow extra time because of possible problems on the road network. And therefore, I don't think in this case we can actually delay proceedings. We're still going through the preliminaries, if you remember, and we haven't got to the point actually of formally discussing the application. So I think until that particular time comes, I think it would be fair and proper, Councillor Hooker, that we allowed Councillor Dick to attend, providing he's not arrived after the start of the first presentation.
I wasn't suggesting you delayed it, Chairman. I was saying you could use your position discreetly of how quickly you took the business until he arrived.
Well, as you noticed, I have, and he's just arrived. So I think the problem of 3
You can now
members
speed up your
being,
business.
the problem of 3 members being arriving after 6 o'clock, I think is probably not necessarily so relevant at that point. But I think for members of the public, I think it's appropriate for me just to introduce Councillor Howard Wollaston to my left, Councillor Paul Dick to my left also, and to my right, Councillor Nigel Foote. We are now all in attendance. So we are moving on now to item 1, which is apologies. And of course, looking at the clerk, I won't need to say, have we got any apologies? Because we're all here. Okay, so I think we now move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make my declarations first, and then I'm going to go around the table. So obviously, I'm a member of Newbury Town Council and its Planning and Highways Committee, where this application had been discussed on occasions, and the earlier applications also. In the case of tonight, I will obviously listen intently and weigh up all the evidence put in front of us before making any decision. And also, of course, I think out of fairness, and I would imagine this is probably for every member, I've obviously been lobbied by a range of people, I might add, on this application here tonight, and I suspect it's the same with everybody else. Councillor Anthony Amatoraj.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I think, as you said, I've been lobbied by a number of councillors and members of the public who have been opposing this, but I will attend this meeting with open mind and participate in the debate. Yeah.
Yes, Chair, I've also been lobbied by a number of people.
Councillor Wollaston.
Yes, Chair, I've been lobbied by a number of people opposing it and also by the applicant going back about 2 to 3 years when they asked for some advice, is probably the best way to put it, on the amount of affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies for my lateness in the aftermath of a road traffic accident, but fortunately no one was hurt. I have been lobbied by people in opposition to this application, no one else, and I'm confident that I will listen to the debate tonight and can come to an appropriate view.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I also would like to apologise, Chair, for late arrival. But yes, I have a number of things to report. First of all, I am a member of Newbury Town Council. I do sit on the Planning and Highways Committee. I'm also a heritage champion for West Berkshire Council. I'm also a member of the Newbury Society, and I have been lobbied by objectors on this application.
Thank you.
Yes, ditto from what other people have said, and like Councillor Wollaston, I first met the applicant, I think, before COVID. So it's been a long time getting to committee with this, but certainly been lobbied by the opponents. I'd also add that I probably live lot closer than anybody, even the ward members, to this area. It only takes me 5 minutes to get to the edge of what we're proposing tonight, but then there's several thousand people who live in Newbury as close as me. But I thought I should declare that.
Thank you, and Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've been lobbied as well by the group of Hermitage residents and others, all of which have been in opposition to this application.
Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you. I haven't actually been lobbied by anybody, so I feel a little left out. But I should declare that I have my business based in Newbury, or one of my businesses anyway. It used to be on Northbrook Street. It's currently at Westmills Yards, which is within 200 metres. But as far as I can tell, this development has no impact whatsoever on that. So, but just for the record.
Thank you very much, members. Now we're going to move to item 3A, which of course is the application. Application 23/020294/FUL MAJ, the Mel, the Kennett Centre, Newbury. For those who are new to this meeting, I'm going to briefly explain the procedure. Officers will present the application to the committee, after which the following groups will also make representations: parish town council representatives, objectors, supporters, the applicant and or the agent, and then ward members. Ordinarily, in accordance with the council's constitution, the total time allowed for speeches in respect of each of these groups of speakers should not exceed 5 minutes. Nevertheless, the council has received requests for the time limit for each group of speakers to be extended tonight to 10 minutes. It would appear sensible for this request to be allowed on this occasion. This occasion obviously is a special occasion. The committee would have to suspend standing orders to allow for each group of speakers to speak for 10 minutes. Therefore, can I ask members to propose to suspend standing orders for a speaker to speak? Okay, right. Councillor Wollaston, I think you proposed it initially. Other seconding by Councillor Vickers. All those in favour, please show. I think that is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right, okay, so I will now obviously, I'm going to announce that when the standing orders is commencing, because at this moment in time, we're still going through the procedure to start with, and the process obviously needs to be kept within the standing orders. So at this particular time, I'm now going to ask, firstly, is there any further clarification required of members at all? No? Okay. We will then now start on the determination of the application, and formally I'm going to invite Matthew Shepherd to begin his presentation. So over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to share the PowerPoint to start off with. Right. So the application before you tonight, councillors, is 2302094, full major. The site is the mall, the Kent Centre, Newbury, RG145EN. The proposal is a full planning permission for redevelopment of the Kennett Centre, comprising the partial demolition of the existing building on the site and development of new residential dwellings, use class C3, residential ancillary facilities, commercial, business and service floor space, including offices, class E, access, parking, cycle parking, landscaping, and open space, sustainable energy installations, associated works, and alterations to the retained view cinema and multi-storey car park. The reason the application has come before you at Planning Committee tonight has been referred by the Development Control Manager due to the level of public interest. The recommendation of officers is outlined on the front page of of the report. It is approval subject to planning conditions and subject to the completion of a legal agreement. Should that legal agreement not be completed, the recommendation will change to refusal. Moving through the slides, just to remind you of the location plan of the island of development that we are looking at here. You can see the faint red line that skirts around the outside of the site. Moving through, we have the site layout plan, which is normally at A1, so it may be a bit blurry on that side, but you'll note the proposed new street through the centre of the site, the access from Market Street, which connects to the train station, and accesses across the site, linking the marketplace and other streets within Newbury. The next slide just shows you in a little bit more detail in terms of the roofscapes that we have on the development and areas of communal gardens that will serve the amenity for the proposed development. Moving through to the three street elevations that we showed quite extensively at the site visit earlier in the week. So we see above Market Street elevation in the middle, we can just see the two-storey of the Newbury Public House and the retained car park. And moving down to the Cheap Street elevation, you'll orientate yourself with the town hall and the cinema complex. Moving through, so the site visit earlier in the week concentrated very much on the external views of the development. So I have sought to show you all the block elevations. So in reference to this, we have all the elevations shown on for the different block, and on the bottom right, the red highlights which section we're talking about. We've also provided councillors with a paper map showing which block we're talking about. So hopefully that will help a little bit with orientation and talking about the different blocks. So you can see here this the Market Street elevation is the top left, which it will sit adjacent to the other development. It's 6 stories on this side of the development. Moving to the east side, so to the right hand side of the main street, so block D, you'll see it 6 stories as well, with the taller buildings in the background. Moving through, we have block A, which is 7 stories into the site and show into the site. You'll see the sections on there to show what is existing already around it. You'll see the new access from Cheap Street, and you'll see the different elevations and the different tallness of the stories of the buildings to show you different aspects of the development. Again, block A, that image to the bottom of the screen would show you the internal view looking outwards, so from the proposed streets of block A. Moving through, this is block B, so moving through into the site, into the center of the site, showing you how the relationship with the other buildings are created and the street scenes throughout. Again, so the top image shows you block B from the east, so from in the internal view in looking out over the proposed development. Moving through, we have block E, which we're now on Bartholomew Street on the outside. So we can see the street elevations. Again, that top image shows you the Newbury Public House on that development. Further down, this is Block F, so we're now at the north of the site, adjacent to the new access that will connect up towards the St Nicholas Church, and it shows the curved shop frontage. That top left image shows that curved frontage, and that will greet people into the new street elevation through to the marketplace. Block H is at the very north, very tip of the development. Again, a much lower profile of development, only 2 or 3 stories here, reflecting the nature of development in the immediate area. Block G, so we're moving down the eastern side of the development now, showing the new accesses and the archways to create the entrance from the marketplace, shown on the top left image and the top right image from the internals. Moving down towards Cheap Street, we can see here we're at the bottom right of the site where the service entrance is. We can see in terms of Block C north elevations, the top right, if you were stood in the marketplace, you may see that elevation. Moving through, we show you the landscape and public realm. So throughout the development, the proposal is to have seated areas, landscaping, trees throughout to make an attractive public street through the development. Just moving into a little bit more focused on the proposed plans. So we have blocks B, E, F, and G here, showing the different aspects of the frontages and the layout of what will occur in terms of commercial entities and how that will sit around existing buildings, which are the block greyed out areas. Moving further down, we have the retained Kennet Centre car park and the different aspects here from Market Street. To the right-hand side, you'll see here that the View Cinema and Nando's restaurants and things like that are retained out on Cheap Street. You can also see where the Catherine Wheel Public House is and where the service entrance right in the centre of that image is. So the design access statement showed some internal mock-ups of the developments. The plan on the left-hand side just defines where these images are taken from. So we move from north to south with this proposed development. So you can see in terms of these are artist's impressions used by SketchUp to show the elevation. So the view from the new street from Bartholomew Street and view into the developments. At the bottom right, you can see St Nicholas Church from within the development looking outwards. Again, moving through, so top left, you can see just the spire of the town hall coming available. And you can also see kind of what is envisaged from the public realm and the areas throughout this development. So landscaping, nice open spaces, cafes and seating areas. Moving through, the top left is the view of Bears Lane. So the turreted kind of area is the Catherine Wheel on that top left image on the left-hand side, and then the access through on Bear Lane. You can obviously see it from there, the perspective of how the development would sit behind the development in terms of different elevations you may see. Bottom left is the new street looking southwards, so towards the train station. So you can see how the flow of the development through the site would appear. Moving on, just another image, top left, you see kind of the communal areas, the squares and the public squares that are created, and the view on the bottom right towards the south, towards Market Street. So you'll just be able to make out the gable ends of the relatively new Market Street development. This plan just shows you in a little bit more clarity the ground floor uses. So the residential uses are yellow. So some of those are lobbies and entrances to access the flats at the first floors and above. The residential development are the blue areas. Commercial units are obviously the larger of those in purple and things like that. So it just gives you an idea of the spread and where the shops may be on the proposed development. Just going to move through these quite quickly because they are a bit distorted. So we've just got the viewpoints that we have different aspects. So this one's from right down towards McDonald's on the high street. So see on the right-hand side will be what is proposed. The left-hand side is what is existing. So the viewpoints are printed. They're at the front of the room, just on the glass cabinet if you want to have a look in a little bit more detail, or there are documents within the planning file. So moving through, we explored this one from Northbrook Street, so just where we stood next to Coat Restaurant. We can see the development rising up on the right-hand side out of the Kennet Centre as proposed. So here, moving across towards St Nicholas Church, towards Lloyd's Bank, we can see on the right-hand side here where the new entrance and new street section will become a replacement for what we have already in terms of the blue frontage next to Nero's. Moving through, so we're into the marketplace now at viewpoint 4, showing the different elevations running down through towards Cheap Street and the development rising up behind on some of the areas in the centre of the pictures. Again, just a little bit closer to the corner, to the marketplace, to the retained Pizza Express, no, not Pizza Express, some of the retained shops. So we see the different elevations and the articulation of the design and the different brickworks proposed in this development. Moving through down towards the towpath, we have here a artist's impression, which is very faint, unfortunately. So this is a wire line, if you'll follow my cursor, which hopefully is a bit clearer on the live stream, where the proposed development will sit and the views that might be afforded from the towpath at viewpoint 6. We move now towards Victoria Park. So again, very difficult to make out on this image, but in the center of this viewpoint, you'll see where the development is. I don't know how much more valuable it is to show the rest of these images given the quality, but from viewpoint 9, so we're now up on the dual carriageway run through to developments. You see the BT tower, you'll see the clock tower over here, and the outline, the wire outline of the green running along where my cursor is. Moving out towards the roundabout, so the BT tower in the foreground, KFC here, and we can see here where the development will present itself within the street scenes of Newbury and within its conservation area. Moving on to the railway bridge over the railway, we have the outline of the developments. We can see the Market Street development. We can see the different outlines here running across the skyline. Moving down a little bit clearer from the viewpoint, so we have viewpoint 12, just opposite Craven Road. So you can see where the retained car parking is. You see the mansard roof, and then where the development is at 5 stories, heading down to 4 stories away towards into the town centre. We looked at these from the swing bridge, from the towpath. I don't think we got this far down, but again, this shows you the wire outline of the development on the right-hand side, which hopefully, and you can see St Nicholas Church. We looked at this viewpoint number 14, where we stopped at the canal, again, hidden behind the weir buildings on this side, and the church building, again, from earlier on, where we saw on the site visit earlier in the week, we saw the outline of this and displayed. Moving through, we saw St Nicholas Church, so you'll see where the development comes up and over and is visible in the street scene from Nicholas Church on West Mills. So we'll come along up from the detailing of the church. Moving through, so that's my slides. Unfortunately, tonight I will be presenting in a way that I don't particularly like in terms of there's a lot to cover, so I will move through the report in a way. I have a written speech, which hopefully I'll try and make as fluent and interesting as possible, but the developments for 427 build-to-rent units. Build-to-rent schemes are an intermediate form of housing, moving away from private individual landlords and open market housing towards more institutionalized, professionally managed rental schemes. They often offer longer tenancy agreements of 3 years or more and will be typically professionally managed in a single ownership or management control. For context, it is generally considered that build to rent is a positive way of meeting growth demand within the UK housing market. The benefits are that it can boost housing supply quite quickly. It can be developed quite quickly as well. It's a method of utilizing high density housing, economies of scales, and efficient use of space, which is well suited to brownfield development within town centres. They also offer increased housing choice for people priced out of open market housing, people who may not be eligible for social housing yet cannot afford their own home. In addition to the housing proposed, there's around 3,000 square meters of new use class E floor space, so that's shops, commercial. The retention of the cinema and restaurants, 623 cycle places on site, 3 new car club spaces, 53 electric charging vehicle points. The site currently comprises the Kennet Centre shopping centre, built in the late 1970s, early 80s. It is in a state of decline, according to the applicants, and is considered to be failing as a shopping centre and in need of significant investment and repurposing. The proposed development involves the demolition of the majority of the centre, with the exception of the View Cinema block and multi-storey car park. Scheme is made up of 9 residential blocks ranging from 2 to 8 stories in height. See the update report just for reference to updates from the stories that are incorrect within my committee report. In comparison with the previous application and the appeal scheme, the history is also covered in the committee report. Blocks A and B have been reduced by 2 stories. The previous scheme was refused and initially appealed, but through work and engagement with officers, the new scheme was submitted, to which is subject to this application. The site is within the settlement boundary of Newbury in an urban area in proximity to listed buildings, which are listed in 3.17 of the report, within Newbury Town Centre's conservation area of archaeological interest, within the commercial area of the town centre, part of the primary shopping frontage, is in close proximity to a SSI site and the Kennet and Avon Canal. It's near to public rights of way, and some of the site is within flood zone 2. Moving on to the various consultation responses, which I'll point out the pertinent issues. Newbury Town Council have objected to the application, stating it's out of scale with the character and scale of Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area, does not preserve or enhance the listed buildings in its vicinity, and it fails to meet the criteria regarding public benefits of historic England. Internal consultees, such as the lead local flood authority, have not raised objections. Highways officers, archaeology officers, ecology and tree officers have also not raised objections. Economic development officers support the application. The NHS Care Board have no objections, subject to a commuted sum. Environmental health officers have raised concerns in regard to the development, which I will cover later in this presentation. The Newbury Society raises the following objections: that the development is out of scale and the proportion with the rest of the Newbury Town Centre is out of character and harmful to the Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area and also the heritage assets, listed buildings and otherwise. The designs of the flats in Market Street and street frontages, design of Block E, are all in need of improvements. These designs and those of Blocks A, B and S are not appropriate to the conservation area. There's a substantial shortfall in affordable housing. There's a substantial shortfall in dedicated parking spaces, and the vehicle access from Cheech Street would have a harmful effect on the circulation of the town centre. There's also a shortfall, in their opinion, on the amenity space for WBC's policy requirement. Historic England have come to a balanced view. They considered that the issues and safeguards outlined in their advice need to be addressed in terms of paragraphs 206 and 208 of the framework being the National Planning Policy Framework. However, through conversations with the conservation officers, in their view, they have got to a point with the design where, if properly detailed, the harm cannot get much lower if the scale of development proposed is to be delivered. If your council is satisfied the scale of development is needed to deliver the benefits, that could reasonably be considered a clear and convincing justification. In terms of this, this could be interpreted as maintaining their objection, albeit subject to our planning and conservation balance, or no objection subject to planning balance. I'll leave that open to interpretation for the decision maker. Representations have been received from 97 contributors, 2 of which support, 92 of which object, and 3 provide ambivalent views. In terms of those, there are a number of issues and objections raised, but the issues are that nothing significant has changed from the previous application. The scale of development is still not appropriate for this location. The impact of the traffic during the build process will be negative. There's a harm to the heritage and the landscape characters of the market town, inadequate provision of car parking, lack of private outdoor space, lack of natural light into blocks, and overshadowing of blocks. The letters of support detail that it will revitalise the area and bring investment to the town, and will help tackle the growing population of Newbury and will deliver much needed housing. We've also received a number of petitions from the Newbury Society covered in 5.3 of the report, and they're updated in terms of the number of signatures in the update report. We've also received 2 further representations which are covered within the update report. The main considerations for the application are listed in the report. I will try and make a brief summary through the report of each issue and on that side. We are in terms of the principal development, we are in the centre of Newbury in a highly sustainable location, redeveloping a brownfield site in settlement boundaries. The principle of development is widely supported by the core strategy and spatial strategies. There is, however, a net loss of around 15,000 square metres of Class E commercial floor space in comparison to the existing site. This would consist of both shop floor space and the internal walking areas, which are replaced by public realm through the site. Some of the site is within flood zone 2, and therefore the provision of new development must pass the flooding sequential test. The flooding sequential test must look at whether there is any sequentially preferable locations for development to take place. In other words, a location that is not in a flood zone. Development has looked at whether other sites outside the flood zone 2 across the district can accommodate the quantum of development proposed here. The report outlines how a certain level of build-to-rent flats need to be proposed on the site to accommodate economies of scale, and therefore when assessing alternative sites, they need to assess whether they could accommodate all or some of the development. The sequential test found no alternative available sites that could accommodate this quantum of development, and such the sequential test is considered to have been passed by officers. Moving to the economic development section of the report, the economic development team support the applications on grounds that the redevelopment of the Kennett Centre is key to unlocking the long-term viability and economic prosperity of Newbury and the wider district by meeting the changing needs of residents, businesses and visitors. It is recognised by economic development officers in 10.4 of the report that if this site is not redeveloped, then it will limit the ability of the town centre to grow as a main economic hub of West Berkshire and a destination residence for residents and visitors. There is a risk that the Kennett Centre, as it is now, as an outdated and redundant commercial site, will become a stranded asset if it's not allowed to redevelop and improve. The Economic Development Officer has referenced the Newbury Town Centre Master Plan. However, this carries little weight in the planning process as it does not form part of the local plan. It does, however, set out the Council's overall vision for the town centre, including the importance of redeveloping the Kennett Centre. It notes the Kennett Centre, located at the southern end of the town, provides a second shopping facility. However, it is older and noticeably more dated than Parkway and provides a lower quality retail offer. Going on to say, if approved, the scheme will reduce the overall volume of retail floor space whilst offering new flexible use and commercial uses that complement the national multiple retail offering more concentrated in the northern end of the town centre. The master plan proposes enhanced arrival spaces at the rail and bus station. The Kennett Centre proposals, together with Market Street redevelopment, create stronger links from the rail station to the town centre. The Kennett Centre has historically catered to large national chains, while the redevelopment's aim is to include smaller ground floor units for the purposes of being marketed towards smaller, more independent businesses. The master plan stresses the importance of this shift occurring in Newbury to ensure a vibrant mix of uses and economic resilience of the town centre. Over the last decade, the Kennett Centre has seen rising vacancy rates as occupiers have slowly moved away from the site. This has caused the employment on the site to drop by 47%. That's from circa 349 full-time equivalent staff in 2012 to around 185 in 2020. The redevelopment, as proposed, is estimated to create a net employment capacity of 134 additional full-time equivalent jobs. The development will also provide residential space for 427 households, which are expected to generate circa £7.5 million per year in expenditure for the local economy, thus providing the Eagle Quarter and the town centre with a large customer base. Vacant retail space has been on the rise across the UK since 2020, with Newbury adhering to this trend, albeit the impact has not been as severe. As such, the reduction in commercial floor space proposed is justifiable given the outdated and long-term vacancy of large proportions of the existing Kennett Centre, competition from existing shopping centres such as Parkway, and the pedestrian benefits gained across Newbury from the redevelopment of the central street Street. Overall, the Economic Development Officer supports the application. Turning to affordable housing, policy CS6 of the core strategy is concerned with the provision of affordable housing. Council should seek 30% affordable housing on a development such as this, which would equate to 128 affordable units. It is, however, the applicant's case that no affordable housing units can be delivered on site as the development is considered unviable. Policy CS6 notes that provision of affordable housing is subject to economics of provision. The summary in the report, section 11.8, establishes the following. A scheme delivering 100% private rented units generates a gross development value of 130 million. The total cost of delivering the scheme is around 158 million. The applicants have assumed a developer return of 14.5 million, which equates to a 12.5% return. Should be noted that the MPPF and guidance could allow up to a 20% return on gross development value. It is legitimate to use a high profit figure, which could make the development, it could be legitimate to use a high profit figure, which could make the development even less viable. Delivering a 100% private tenure mix, the scheme generates a residual land value of minus 41.61 million. The existing value of the site is 4.25 million. When the residual land value of the proposed scheme delivering 100% private tenure is compared against the benchmark land value, this produces a deficit of £46.36 million. Therefore, the scheme is considered unviable to provide any affordable housing in the applicant's approach. The council has employed an independent viability consultant, Dixon Searle, to review this scheme and the applicant's financial viability appraisal. The conclusion of our consultants is that the development is not viable and cannot provide affordable housing. For this reason, a policy compliant level of affordable housing cannot be provided or as a commuted sum. The development, whilst not providing affordable housing, does not strictly conflict with CS15 as the policy makes allowances for the economics of the development to dictate the level of contribution. It is obviously a negative that no affordable housing is being delivered. The weight afforded to this issue will be discussed later. Moving to heritage design, character and appearance, the application proposes the redevelopment of the 70s and 80s shopping centre in close proximity to a number of listed buildings within the Newbury Conservation Area. It has a prominent location within Newbury, forming part of an island site bounded by Market Street and Cheap Street to the south and to the east. Due to its central location in the core of the town, any redevelopment of the site has the potential to impact the significance of the conservation area and the setting of numerous listed buildings and non-designated heritage assets, which are experienced from a number of short and medium distance viewpoints within the town centre. The conservation area holds above 150 listed buildings and structures and a number of heritage assets of local significance. These are listed in 12.13 of the report. Although there's no single architectural style that dominates in the Newbury Town Centre, there's generally a high quality stock of 18th and 19th century buildings and survival of some 16th and 17th century buildings. There's a shared palette of traditional materials, narrow plots, fine urban grain, and generally a low-level buildings that create a strong, coherent character. Whilst building heights within the town centre vary due to differing designs, the majority buildings are of a relatively small scale, comprising 2-3 stories, with the occasional attic floor with dormers. The exception to this are the Corn Exchange, Town Hall, towers of St Nicholas and St Joseph's churches, which intentionally protrude above the roofline of the surrounding buildings and form key landmarks within the area. Moving to the proposed development is a mixed-use development, primarily residential commercial. A number of taller buildings, up to 8 stories, are located in the centre of the site, along Market Street, up to 6 stories. Building heights mostly vary between 2 to 5 stories around the surrounding streets. I provided the block heights as a plan for you on your desk in front of you. The proposed development results in a substantial increase in height and built form, especially towards the centre and the south of the site, which would be perceived in a range of townscape views. The new perimeter buildings, alongside landscaping and associated works, will result in altered streetscapes and views through the conservation area. The application is considered through its impact on the character and appearance of Newbury Town Centre and the setting of Newbury nearby listed buildings. Historic England confirmed that, in their view, the proposal is at a point where, if properly detailed, the harm cannot get much lower if the scale of development proposed is to be delivered. They advise that if the council is satisfied that the scale of development proposed is needed to deliver the benefits, then this would be clear and convincing justification. Our officers have provided justification for the scheme that there is clear and convincing justification for the scale of the development proposed. It is clear that the loss of the existing 70s and 80s shopping centre has been clearly and convincingly justified due to the limited architectural benefit of this building and the poor fabric it contains. The proposed demolitions are necessary to provide a more appropriate building envelope that would enhance the town by providing improved permeability in connections through the town centre and replacing the existing unattractive, largely blank facades with new buildings that respect the historic plot patterns, architectural detailing and materials of the conservation area. The retention of existing building structures and upgrading these have been explored, but it is not possible to achieve this and provide a high quality development. The quantum and heights have been reduced through discussions with officers in Historic England during pre-application and the application process to bring it to a minimum required in order to make the redevelopment of this site viable and achieve a high quality architecture and materiality. This is evidenced in the accompanying financial viability assessment, which demonstrates that any further reduction in the quantum of proposed development will result in the scheme that would not be economically viable. Harm to the significance. Whilst the height of the internal blocks have been reduced, they are still considered to be substantially taller than the surrounding built form, departing from the scale and massing of Newbury's historic core. The scale of the proposed development within the centre of the site would harm the significance of the conservation area and a number of listed buildings within it. It is acknowledged that reduction in heights of these blocks has materially reduced their impact compared to previous developments. However, the increased massing and built form can still be perceived in the scheme. Whilst the increase in built form departs from the scale of Newbury as a historic market town, this is mitigated in part by the articulated and varied roof forms of the proposed development, which reduces the perception of massing at a high level. Whilst the proposed development is still considered to harm the significance of the conservation area and a number of listed buildings within it, the harm has been meaningfully reduced through a reduction in heights of blocks A, B, and improvements to the facades of different blocks. There is a low to moderate level of less than substantial harm in the conservation officer's view. In summary, the proposal scheme will result in harm to the significance of the conservation area and the setting of a number of surrounding listed buildings, and largely as a result of the increased height and scale of the centre of the site. Paragraph 201 to 206 of the framework states that any harm or loss of the significance of a designated heritage asset should require clear and convincing justification. Paragraphs 12.33 and 12.34 in the officer report sets out which we consider clear and convincing justification for the scale of the development proposed. With respect to paragraph 208 of the framework, Conservation Officer considers the scheme will result in less than substantial harm to the significance of the conservation area and the setting of a number of listed buildings. Conservation Officer considers that the harm would now be to a low to moderate level of less than substantial harm to the heritage assets. It is important to note that despite being at the lower end of less than substantial, this harm is real and serious and carries significant weight in the planning balance. In line with paragraph 208 of the framework, the less than substantial harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the planning proposal, and this will be done so in the planning balance section later in this report. In terms of urban design, the layout has been carefully designed to integrate with the town centre, paying special regard to the urban grain and the pattern of development and movement through the town centre. It provides a permeable layout that connects with surrounding streets, offering a strong framework north to south and east to west. The redevelopment of the Kennet Centre would also open the area in the centre of the site to the public rather than being closed off inside the old shopping centre, which closes at night. This would provide a new street with active frontages, cafes, seating areas and landscaping. The layout and arrangement of blocks is such that public spaces will be overlooked by buildings. In addition, each building has an active frontage, either commercial or residential. The scheme therefore provides a high level of natural surveillance, which will help reduce opportunities for crime and disorder. The proposed development is considered to create an acceptable environment in terms of neighbouring amenity. The design of the development adheres to the existing street pattern. The windows facing out the development serving residential development would follow the SPG requirements for minimum street depths. This distance ensures adequate spacing between windows serving residential development. The use classes on the ground floor will all be subject to planning conditions to ensure that they do not impact residential development above. There are extensive conditions on land contaminations, and environmental officers do not raise concern in regards to air quality. The area of contention for environmental health officers is the Newbury Public Health House, which has a terrace to the rear to which is overlooked by the proposed residential properties. This terrace has music events on it, which may give rise to noise issues with the proposed development. Noise assessments have been undertaken by the applicants and were considered by officers. Several rounds of these noise surveys have been submitted, and environmental health officers are concerned that live music on the terrace from the Newbury will result in significant levels of noise within the future development, which is likely to make residential development undesirable. The flats in Block B are in close proximity to the terrace and would directly overlook it. Flats in Blocks E and F would also be significantly affected. It appears that around 100 flats will have exposed facades towards the Newbury Public House. There is some debate over the Newbury's license conditions, but it's clear that notwithstanding this, they are in close proximity between the nighttime economy and the future receptors of noise. Environmental health officers have suggested that facades of the properties overlooking the Newbury's terrace will require a high level of sound insulation. Mechanical ventilation will be required to eliminate the need to open windows ventilation. Suitable attenuation for all openings would be required, and this detail can be secured by planning condition. Even if acceptable internal noise levels can be achieved through good building design, the communal gardens and private balconies will experience high noise levels. The applicant's acoustic consultant states that the times at which music events would take place at the public house would be at times at which communal gardens would not typically be in use. However, there would be an experience of the level of noise. Environmental health officers are of the opinion that this would make the living environments in the location undesirable. However, planning officers consider that suitable mitigation measures could be introduced by for noise sources that would consider typical for the town centre location. These would be, however, issues of glazing and not being able to open your window, and mechanical ventilation would restrict future amenity to an extent. It is acknowledged that the development does conflict with these policies in regard to noise for future residents. However, officers are confident this can be mitigated to an acceptable level in a town centre environment by planning conditions. Turning to outdoor amenity space, each flat is supposed to be provided with circa around 25 square metres of shared amenity space. Development provides circa around 13 square metres of private amenity space. Inspectors in officers' experience recognise that constraints on development mean that providing the above level can be difficult, and we have accepted, and inspectors have accepted in developments such as those in Thatcham, for instance, that provision of amenity space is key, that no amenity space is where appeals get dismissed, but some provision is an acceptable solution. The development does not provide any public open space provision, but it must be acknowledged that the site is a brownfield town centre development, and the provision of open space would be very difficult to accommodate. The location development is located near to Newbury Parks, to the towpath, and it provides a financial contribution to public open space upkeep. Through the report, highways officers will speak to their section of the report in due course. Regarding sustainable construction, the development will meet BREEAM Excellent for the commercial areas. CS15 requires major development to achieve net zero carbon emissions. However, the applicant has proposed ground source heat pumps systems that will achieve a 48% reduction in carbon emissions, so it won't meet the requirements of zero carbon of CS15. However, CS15 has a caveat within it that such provision should be technically or economically viable. Again, bearing in mind the applicant's viability report previously talked about, more further provision of renewable energies and zero carbon tackling technologies would increase costs of development and therefore make the development further unviable. In terms of CS15, there is caveats, so it is technically in accordance with CS15. Turning to flood risk and sustainable drainage, I've talked about the sequential tests having been passed earlier. In terms of surface water management, development is considered a betterment over the existing historic scenario, and the proposal would alleviate pressure on Thames Water surface water sewers over the existing scenario. There is an updated surface water condition recommended by our officers. Our archaeology officers raised no objections subject to conditions. Our tree officer acknowledges that the landscaping proposed in the scheme will be more than the existing shopping centre itself and has a considerable benefit. The ecology officer acknowledges the limited levels of ecology on site, has recommended a number of conditions to deal with ecology during construction and into the future. The planning obligation in section 22 outlines the required money to be paid to address various requirements to make the planning application acceptable. Turning to the planning balance and conclusion, I've set out in the planning balance section a series of from great, significant, moderate, limited, and none, so a hierarchy of weight that I've used. The benefits of the proposal would deliver 427 dwellings on previously developed land in a highly sustainable town centre location. It would contribute to meeting future housing needs in the district and nationally, and is an important social benefit, attracting great positive weight. The dwellings would also be built to rent dwellings, which is a form of intermediate housing, addressing another aspect. So significant positive weight is given to this. The proposed development creates a continuous street through Newbury from the train station into the town centre, increasing legibility. The changes cannot be understated in terms of planning benefit to Newbury and the placemaking that this creates. This aspect creates great positive weight. The development proposes to alter dated and failing shopping centre with the proposed redevelopment of a highly attractive design. It would alter currently empty shop frontages to active, attractive frontages, enhancing the streetscape externally around the site. The proposed street through the development would be a significant enhancement to the current covered enclosed shopping area. This issue attracts significant positive weight. Economic benefits have also been talked about, and that would attract significant positive weight in terms of employment generated and economic benefits. In terms of surface water management, the benefits explained earlier attract moderate weight in terms of enhancement to the area's sustainable drainage capabilities. Parking, there is considered to be a lack of parking from the development at specific times. However, this is addressed through a planning obligation, which my colleague will discuss further in his presentation. Given the obligation that is in place to mitigate the harm, the issue has neutral weight in the planning balance. Again, with renewable energies, whilst we're not meeting zero carbon, there is a reason for that, and the policy provides a caveat, and therefore this also issue carries neutral weight in the decision making. Moving to the disbenefits, there is significant negative weight to the development due to not providing affordable housing. Great weight must be given to the harm to these heritage assets would be at a low, moderate level of less than substantial, but nevertheless, great weight should be given to this issue. Moderate negative weight is given to the amenity issue for future occupiers, which may be impacted by nighttime economy of Newbury. This is considered to attract moderate weight, as this is only in the outdoor amenity areas. Internal amenity can be preserved by conditions. Impact on the heritage asset significance and the NPPF tests is acknowledged that there would be a level of less than substantial harm to the heritage assets in this case from the development. However, there is clear and convincing justification for the scheme in our considered opinion. Officers have given great weight and importance to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character and appearance of the conservation area, the setting of listed buildings and other non-designated heritage assets. It is considered that the less than substantial harm that would be caused by the proposed development has been adequately mitigated by the quality of design, and the harm would be outweighed by the high level of public benefit that would result in accordance with Section 66 and 72 of the Planning's Listed Building and Conservation Area Act 1990 and the NPPF framework. In terms of the overall conclusion, as set out, the above application includes a variety of planning benefits and disbenefits, such that a balanced conclusion is required. It is considered by officers having particular regard to the redevelopment opportunities presented by this proposal, that taken together, the planning benefits of the proposal outweigh the disbenefits, and there are no other material considerations of sufficient weight that indicate that planning permission should lead to refusal. Technical issues from consultees can be dealt with by way of planning conditions. In view of the above, the planning application is acceptable and satisfactory, and officers recommended that it should be granted planning permission subject to conditions and prior satisfactory completion of the Section 106 legal agreement. The proposed resolution includes the ability to refuse the application if the Section 106 is not completed within a reasonable time. Full recommendation is covered within my report. There is an extensive list of planning conditions at the back of the report where an overview list is provided. I don't propose to head through all those conditions, but I can answer any questions. And Chairman, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for a very comprehensive report, Matthew, I might add. Now turning to Paul Goddard, in view of the traffic, highways and obviously parking issues, I would imagine you're going to address section 15 of the agenda. Is that correct, Paul?
That would be correct, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
And for all those gathered, that is from page 46 of your main report. And I will follow that report mainly in the order that it is written before you. So to begin with, on traffic generation, your officers take the view that the Kennet Shopping Centre and the town centre as a whole would have generated higher traffic generation than what these items generate now today, partly because of the changes in shopping habits that have taken place over the years. And therefore, the proposal before you tonight would not, in our view, increase traffic from what would be generated by the Kennet Shopping Centre in its heyday. However, due to the projections, there would be an increase in traffic generation during the morning due to the residential development that is on offer within the development. As requested by your officers to ascertain the impact of that additional traffic in the AM peak, the applicants used the council's area-wide VISIM traffic model. They modelled all junctions along Market Street from Bartholomew Street up to the A339 and found that this proposal, even with the higher traffic generation in the morning peak, will not result in any severe impact of this development in traffic terms on the highway network in the town centre and beyond. Nevertheless, there is a framework travel plan submitted that will be secured either by condition or part of the Section 106 agreement with a comprehensive package of measures that would encourage more walking, cycling and use of public transport. So on to the access and the site layout of the site. The existing Kennet Shopping Centre multi-storey car park will be retained within the proposal, with the entrance and exit retained where they are now. The existing service ramp onto Market Street opposite the new Market Street residential development will be removed and the access closed as part of the development. And all footways in the vicinity would all be re-provided as part of the overall enhancements on the outside and within the development itself. There will be 2 new access points for vehicles and servicing to be provided with the development. The first is onto Cheap Street, almost opposite where the post office was. It's for commercial uses, for servicing and for emergency vehicles when required. There is also a further access onto Bartholomew Street, about 30 metres northwards of where the existing entrance to the multi-storey car park is to the Kennet Shopping Centre. This will also be used for servicing and emergency vehicles and will provide additional residence car parking of 83 car parking spaces within. With the provision of this access, this then means that the southern section of Bartholomew Street, south of this new access, would need to become two-way. This then means that the existing rising bollards would need to be moved some 30 metres northwards of their current location. This southern section of Bartholomew Street would need to be reconfigured and resurfaced to allow two-way traffic. And the traffic signal junction onto Market Street on the corner there would need to be reconfigured and updated to allow vehicles to come out onto it southwards, and also to enable vehicles to turn right and pass on down Bartholomew Street. Highway officers have expressed some concerns that the service yards may not be big enough for instance, articulated vehicles that may visit the site. However, we have been assured by the applicants that vehicles of that size are really unlikely to visit the site because the retail units that are provided throughout the development are very small. They're not likely to generate huge lorry movements or large lorries to service them. And besides, there is a framework servicing and management plan submitted that is also being secured by conditions within the committee report itself. Your highway officers are content with the number of cycle storage facilities provided, and quite welcome some of the cycle facilities being provided, including the cycle workshop that's being provided on the Cheap Street side of the site. Electric vehicle charging points we find an acceptable level. On to car parking. The Kennet Centre shopping car park, multi-storey car park, has 415 car parking spaces currently on 4 levels. It is being reduced to 392 on 4 levels, but with 83 car parking spaces provided with the Bartholomew Street access that we mentioned earlier. So in total, there's 475 parking spaces provided, a net increase of 60 of what is already there. Car parking has been the most difficult issue to seek to resolve with the applicants on this site. However, I would like to get one point out of the way first, being that your car parking standards set in policy P1 of the Housing Site Allocations DPD require 471 spaces. With 475 car parking spaces, the residential element of car parking provision meets the council's car parking standards. The problem is, from our point of view as highway officers, is, well, what about all the others that we use the car park? Because this would be a dual use car park. You would have town centre visitors, workers, shoppers coming along as well. And our concern all along has been whether that car park is big enough to cater for all the uses, the residents, plus the town centre visitors and shoppers. And what we have had to do as officers is to do some work to project the likely car parking demand. The applicants have already submitted car parking surveys of Kennet Centre car park that they undertook in November of 22. The thing then is to project how much car parking the residential element would perhaps generate. And what your highway officers did is we surveyed the nearby Bartholomew Court of flats, which is that direction 200 metres away behind my right shoulder with access onto Bartholomew Street. And we undertook some surveys at many different times of the day. And we found that in the evenings, as you would expect, it was about 0.7 cars per flat. But also during the day, it could at times be as high as 0.57 per flat. Probably mainly because these days more people do work from home. Your highway officers are very keen to ensure that we have car parking and a town centre that works, that is viable. And if we then added all the car parking that was surveyed within the Kennet Centre shopping car park, and then what we found in the residential car parking surveys at Bartholomew Street, the results revealed that mostly during the week, the level of car parking would be sufficient. However, at weekends, due to higher demand for shoppers and visitors to the town centre, it is likely to be an issue, and that the Kennet Centre shopping car park would likely to overflow with this development proposal by up to some 90 cars were projected. So your highway officers therefore considered, well, where would, residential car parking's fine. It is in some ways up to us as a council to decide where town centre shoppers park. And members will be aware that we do have visual message signing that tell direct people, the signs that direct people to the town centre car parks and inform you how many car parking is actually available in each car parking space. The signs they were put in with the Parkway development some 15 years ago. They are somewhat ageing and need replacement. The cost of replacing them is some £1 million. And I am pleased to say that the applicants this evening have agreed to provide £500,000 to upgrade the visual message signing to direct people to other car parks within the town centre should the Kennet shopping centre overflow at times, particularly at weekends. There's then the question, well, what car parks are available? How well used are they now? And therefore, during the summer, during June, we commissioned surveys of all town centre car parks, particularly those south of the river near the site. And we found that the car parks around the wharf and the Corn Exchange, they're heavily used. But one car park, the Market Street station car park, is very underused. The only difficulty with that car park is that it was designed for people like your officers to park in during the day, people like me, and it was designed for commuters to park in, but it wasn't really designed for shoppers. And the whole orientation of that car park faces on towards the station. So all this additional car parking that could be displaced by Kennet, the challenge for your highway officers working with the applicants is how to make that car park more attractive to use going forward. So what I would now like you to do is I would refer you to the update report. Which now gives you an update on where your highway officers are with this planning application. So item 6, the first part is all the highway works that I've mentioned that allow access into the site. You've got the new accesses there, the works to Bartholomew Street, the works, the traffic signals at Bartholomew Street, Market Street, and those will be completed by the developer under a Section 278 agreement under the Highways Act 1980. The section below is the improvements that we've agreed in principle with the applicants, and they include the financial contribution of £500,000 to the visual message signing, and also item 2 there, a financial contribution to cycle routes along Bartholomew Street. Active Travel England were quite keen on this, along with your own active travel team within the council. Currently, at the moment, cyclists along Bartholomew Street from Market Street to Bridge Street can only travel northbound. They are prohibited by a traffic regulation order by travelling southbound. This particular item would allow that to change, to allow cyclists to travel north and south along this section of Bartholomew Street, particularly with Bartholomew Street being made two-way south of the new access that we mentioned earlier on. We've also agreed with the applicants some improvements to the Market Street car park to make it more acceptable for use by visitors to the town centre. And there's some headings mentioned in there, even down to making it easier for the doors to open, directional signage within, improved service markings for pedestrians, and improving the route to the car park from Market Street past this very building to connect it much better to the town centre. So as I said, all these works listed there have been agreed in principle with the applicants. And on that basis, I consider that the issue that gave us concern on the level of car parking within the development has been resolved to a satisfactory level, and therefore your highway officers are able to recommend approval of this planning application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul. Do we have Sam Robbins present at all? That wasn't Sam that just walked out, was it? It was. I don't know whether he's it's a short-term departure. We will get to the point of asking the appropriate questions to officers later on in the meeting. Okay. Okay. I think we just pause until. Right. Okay. It's a rather unfortunate moment. Right, can I welcome you to the meeting, Sam? Obviously, I did the introductions at the beginning of the meeting when you weren't present, and now formally welcome you to the meeting. It's your opportunity now to make any observations from an economic point of view, if there's anything you feel appropriate. Otherwise, be prepared for members to ask questions at a later stage.
Thank you. All right, can you hear me all right? Yeah. Yeah, the comments submitted cover the detail really. The important thing to stress really, if you take nothing else away from what was submitted, is what we are afraid of happening is the Kennett Centre essentially becoming a stranded asset, a declining piece of space that kind of pulls down the rest of the town centre with it. And that's really something that one of the main reasons we support this. The improved type of space that's going to be there over and above the existing space. Less retail space clearly, but of a much higher quality, and the same with office space. So yeah, that's the main takeaway.
Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to the speakers section, but before I introduce the first speaker, obviously I need to announce that the standing order is now suspended as from now. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to obviously announce that each speaker will have the 10 minutes to make their presentation. After 9 minutes, I will give you notice, should you require it, that you've got 1 minute left. And obviously, the last few seconds, I will say, can you conclude your presentation?
Each group speaker, not each speaker, each group of speakers. It's each group of speakers, it's not each speaker with 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Right, so we now move on to the speakers, and obviously the parish council, but in this case it's Newbury Town Council, and I call upon Councillor Andy Moore to start your presentation. So over to you, Andy. As soon as you're ready to start, I'll make sure that the stopwatch is set.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, members, Newbury Town Council has had a long engagement with this application and its predecessors, stretching back 4 years to when an initial public presentation was made. As the first council locally to declare a climate emergency, we liked the environmental aspirations in the applications, and we welcome the applicant's willingness to engage with us and present at meetings of our Planning and Highways Committee. But from the very beginning, we've registered major worries about the sheer size and scale of the proposal, its height and massing, and the effect on our town and conservation area should it proceed. As early as June 2021, we expressed a deep concern, followed by a strong objection to another iteration in October 2022. When the earlier applications went to appeal, we registered as a Rule 6 party and prepared a substantial submission. The objections therein were summarised as that the scale of the proposed development would irreparably ruin the existing character of Newbury. The height of the proposed development would have a seriously detrimental impact on the town centre conservation area and the listed buildings nearby. And the proposed development does not meet the requirement for a diversified housing supply for Newbury. The appeal was withdrawn, so we move on to the current application. We earnestly hoped that this would recognise and respond to the huge public concern expressed about the earlier applications as voiced by the Newbury Society and the Town Council. Regrettably, we do not find that much has changed. We first considered the current application on the 6th of November last year with the following summary submitted and on the portal. It is out of scale with the character of the Newbury Town Centre conservation area. It does not preserve or enhance the listed buildings in its vicinity. It fails to meet the criteria required regarding public benefits, which refer to the Historic England guidance. So some slightly different emphases, but the same overall conclusion. The minor changes that were subsequently made did not convince us to change our minds in March. In some more detail, our Heritage Working Group prepared a report which was adopted on behalf of the Town Council and submitted with our November consultation response. This report was informed by the perspectives developed by the Newbury Society, who will speak to the specifics of this. The key for the Town Council was the potential effect on iconic historic buildings along Bartholomew Street, where the Newbury, a listed public house, would be dominated and diminished, and on Cheap Street leading into the marketplace. The same is true with the Catherine Wheel and former Save the Children shop. both listed, are dwarfed by the 7 stories plus roof that would loom behind them. If there is one image from the Newbury Society that will come later that I would wish you to retain during your deliberations, it would be that of these 2 buildings viewed from Bear Lane, at the other end of which has the delight of the BT Tower, an eyesore from a previous generation. Disappointingly, there is no street level view provided from Bear Lane, but since there are few intervening structures and one can stand back up to 100 metres, the elevation view is arguably what the eye would see. Beyond heritage, and voiced in our earlier submissions, were concerns about mix and affordability of housing. It's perhaps difficult to imagine the site being redeveloped with other than flats, although even the Market Street development opposite has managed to include a couple of streets with townhouses. But there are a lot of apartments within the vicinity, Market Street itself, and Bond House, the former Bayer offices, to name 2 of the larger sites, and there is some anecdotal evidence that they and others are not being readily occupied. To accept that yet another large development can make an argument for no affordable housing begins to open debate about whether the policies at national and local levels are really worth the paper they're written on. Given our overwhelming concerns about scale, we had not looked deeply into issues such as amenity space and car parking. Indeed, if the scale were much reduced, the parking equation might be easier to solve. We were also reassured by the repeated comments by highways officers that no special allowances should apply and that the provision was inadequate. It's surprising, therefore, notwithstanding Mr. Goddard's comments just recently, to find that beyond that list of conditions, the parking is now acceptable. But it is inferred that residents would pay and contend with visitors. Others may wish to explore this in detail, but it seems to be potentially to satisfy neither the residents nor visitors, with the possible effects on the already crowded streets of the main thoroughfares of South Newbury. Members, as someone who has formerly sat in your seats, might I observe that the outcome on parking is similar to a number of areas of the officer's report before you this evening. Many of the conclusions seem underwhelming and perhaps reluctantly given, with quite a number of issues still to be determined. If there were perhaps 1 or 2 such matters, that might be acceptable, but the totality, I suggest, might give you pause for serious thought. Newbury Town Council does not object to the principle of redeveloping the Kennett Centre site. It has always been a controversial mix of styles. Some may find that the Bartholomew Street facade opposite the church tolerable, but few could like the Cheap Street construction along from the cinema. Its main original purpose of retail, I shopped there in Sainsbury's in days gone by, has been hollowed out by subsequent developments elsewhere and the online revolution. It is due to be repurposed. But many of us on the town council and large numbers of residents regard this application as an existential threat to the character of our town, which would be permanently damaged by the proposals in front of you. So please, I urge you to go against the recommendation and refuse the application. Then let us try to find another route to the use of this key area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Questions, members? Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening, Councillor. Could you please elaborate on the word you used, anecdotal? I'm interested to understand this anecdotal from estate agents or just members of the public, or could you give me more, please?
I think members of the public, and I recognise that that occupation of housing, that the housing is obviously intended to last many years, and we're talking, a snapshot at the moment. My anecdotal comes from organising the delivery of leaflets into Market Street. Over recent elections, and when some 30 to 50 were considered to be adequate, and they were given to the office for them to distribute inside. So that's 30 to 50 out of, I think, somewhere near 200.
So
I think it's
because that links directly to electoral register, which tells you how many people are living there. Then
exactly so. Yeah.
Further questions to Councillor Moore? No? Okay. You got off reasonably lightly, Councillor Moore.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
Okay, right. I'm going to now call upon Dr. David Peacock. Are you speaking totally within the period that you're granted, or are you going to be joined by the other two names, Anthony Pick and I think one other person?
Sorry,
has put their name
seeking clarification. I mean, I can speak for up to 10 minutes if you allow me the 10 minutes, but if I'm required to share the 10 minutes, then obviously I will so do.
Are you actually, Mr. Pick, not taking up any time within the 10 minutes? Okay, fair enough. And Mrs. Hebbs, are you going to speak at all? With respect, I'm sorry. With respect, I'm sorry, but it's 10 minutes with the section of objectors, which obviously could be considerable number, whereas at the moment it looks as if it's 2. So what I'm a bit concerned about is how you're going to portion the time between yourself. Okay, I think it's appropriate then if Dr. Peacock starts, and if you can conclude well within the time, and then allow Mrs. Hebbs to speak.
Okay.
To give a presentation herself.
If you can give me some warning at about, what, 6 minutes or something like that. But before you start counting, could we acquire the images submitted? Yeah. So they should be numbered, and I'll call out. Is it all right to call out when we move on to the next one?
I've got them 1 to 7 or so. I had them in the number order that you gave them.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Newbury Society. In short, this development would result in long-term damage to Newbury's appearance and townscape, to its heritage and character, and also commercially and economically. The overriding question for consideration this evening is whether this 8-storey development would harm the town centre of Newbury. Do you think that the scale and mass of the proposals are fitting for a town centre where the majority of buildings rise to 2 and 3 storeys? There are other issues which need to be addressed as well. A development on this scale should contain a large guaranteed proportion of affordable housing, and this proposal does not contain any at all. It proposes 5- and 6-storey buildings directly on Newbury's town centre street frontages, and as Historic England has confirmed consistently, will harm this conservation area and its listed buildings. Your planning officers have recognised the negative effect on heritage as something which should be given great weight in reaching a decision. It proposes 427 new flats with no meaningful increase in the number of town centre parking spaces. And I have the figures for that, which I'll come to. The Newbury Society does not oppose residential development on this site, but has consistently opposed the scale and mass of the residential development put forward by the developers. The scale and mass are out of proportion to the rest of the town centre and are in themselves grounds for refusal. The Newbury Society has organised a petition against this development, submitted to the council, which has collected 1,384 signatures. This does not oppose a better redevelopment of the Kennet Centre, but describes this development proposal as too high and overbearing for Newbury, and as something which would harm the special character of this country market town. This is the end of Block S. This is Market Street
the existing wall there is the one with the historic buildings of Newbury and towns across southern England on it, which is currently slightly less, slightly below the height of the multi-storey car park in this position. You're demolishing that. The proposal demolishes that with the 66 car parking spaces, which have not been referenced at all in the parking issues. So with 66 parking spaces and replacing that with a 6-storey block of flats. When you're talking about demolishing the Kennet Centre and replacing it with something better, as is claimed, you do need to look at the individual elements of what is actually being done. And we consider that on balance, this piece, for example, should be considered as a negative rather than as a positive for the application. So if you move on to the next slide. So still in Market Street, you've got the cinema there. You've got the other 6-storey block of flats. This is block D. So 6 stories facing onto Market Street. Weaver's Yard on the other side is 3 stories at each end with 4 stories in the middle. So these are double the height of the 3-storey elements of Weaver's Yard. On the right there, you see the cinema, and you get a perspective, the scale of this in relation to the cinema. Can we have the next slide? Now, the cinema, the dark wall on the left to be demolished. Can we go backwards with slides? The cinema in relation to the 6-storey block of flats. Again, everybody would be happy to see that wall go, but there is a problem with the scale of this replacement. Onwards again. So Bartholomew Street, 5-storey block directly on the street frontage. You know, the original buildings, the existing buildings in this picture are the Newbury, the former Bricklayers Arms at the left, and the lift tower of the multi-storey car park on the right.
5 minutes in.
Thank you. Everything else is part of this development proposal, and you can see the 5-storey flats taller than even the lift tower, and then taller ranges of buildings behind. Next slide. Cheap Street, this is the Catherine Wheel, the Charles II reign building alongside the Catherine Wheel. The buildings behind darkened so that you get a sense of the scale of what is actually proposed from this development. Next slide. And the view from Bear Lane across to the Catherine Wheel with these 7- and 8-storey buildings clearly going to be visible as the setting for these 2 listed buildings. On to the next slide. So it's the 1679 building. The benefits that are labelled for this application.
You're 6 minutes in.
Okay. Just to finish off, if you do consider that this is an application that should be approved, one of the conditions that should be added is the removal of permitted development rights from the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Be prepared for some questions in a minute, Dr. Peacock. Right, okay. This is right. Is
you want to do questions now? Or?
No, we take them all together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have very little to add, but it will be apparent from the previous presentation that a public car park designed for shoppers of 400 and odd car parking positions is being almost entirely taken over within the park parking planning for this development. In our opinion, the car parking provision within the development for the proposed residence should be very much more substantial than the 83 which are planned. It's going to cause really considerable problems, particularly if you take into account the future is unpredictable. We want to plan Newbury for the place that people will come to shop and do all the other things that the centre of Newbury provides. To assign the principal car park, which is currently the Kennet Centre, to other purposes does not seem to me to be a sensible planning proposal.
Thank you. Again, we might call upon you to come back to the lectern in a moment. So, Mrs. Hebbs.
Well, this gentleman and I have lived here 83 and 84 years. And I'm...
We've got 2.5 minutes, Mrs. I'm sorry, but...
10 minutes. Oh, you're not...
Well, you
right, all right. The traffic is bad in the morning and night. We have traffic day and night through the top of the town. Test for air pollution, please. It's day and night. You were wrong. You only said morning. Also, money to spare on bricks along Lloyds to Jones. I went to Reading yesterday. The high street is only 4 stories high and they're rather nice flats, brick. Now, what are we going to have? A beautiful skylight in that shopping centre, wonderful pictures on the... Do you know what? They won't let them do 10 years. That's why Iceland moved. They want at least 10 years. You're trying to get them out. And so did Sainsbury's. You only want them a few years. We want Sainsbury's, Iceland, a decent man's shop back in there because I like men and they're all left out. And perhaps a woman's shop. In fact, I don't like myself. I don't like bossy women. But there we are. Anyway, and the skylight is beautiful. Can we have the piano back in there too? The kids used to love playing that in that shopping centre. There's nothing wrong with the shops. You haven't been very fair. You haven't built very good stuff there and it's all falling apart and there's nothing wrong with it. And those ready car parks up by the station, why don't you make those if nobody's in them? Flats.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Right, well, I don't know where to go. I was born and raised here. I've seen you going to be ruined. And us older people are ancient. But I love ancient buildings. And the king, I wrote to the king about this. I've sent him all that. And guess what? I wrote to him once before and he replied. He doesn't like all this sort of trash. What do we want it for? Let's see if I can get this in. Iceland, the other top wonderful people working there. They're all going to lose their little jobs. We have got hit by COVID, but things are improving now. Let's get back on track. Also bring the piano back for the youngsters. They loved it. A few open musicals, singing in the middle, dancing, playing the guitar, mouth organ, and those little kids' roller skates. Please, please don't let anyone smash it down. I can't cope with the living doing that after 83 years of seeing a beautiful town. It was the loveliest town in the world. We do not want Hong Kong or New York skyscrapers in Newbury. It will kill me.
Can you conclude, please? Sorry. No, that's all right. But you might get a chance to make some points with following questions from the members.
Reading 4 stories high in the main street. It doesn't do Newbury any justice. Why
Can you conclude, please? Sorry. It's okay.
How long will it take? How long will it take? I'll be dead and gone.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful photos of old Newbury.
Thanks very much. Perhaps all 3 of you can stand up at the lectern and then I'm going to look round the table and see if there's any questions. Yes, Councillor Abbs, and is it any particular?
Yeah, first, I'll probably have a couple actually, but first question.
Can you all stand near the lectern? Because Councillor...
Calling Dr. Peacock.
As
Dr.
a
Peacock
question.
to the stand, please. No? Is that Dr. Peacock? That was Mr. Pick. Dr. Peacock, you mentioned several things in your presentation, and thank you very much for the presentation. I got the impression that, well, I started getting the impression you're more upset about the height of the frontage than the centre, or is it both that's equally bad for you?
The Newbury Society has consistently said that we are concerned about both. What would be acceptable in the centre of the development, something higher than what is acceptable on the street frontage. So something like 6 stories we don't find acceptable on the street frontage, but depending on the design, etc., there is a possibility of accepting 5 or 6 stories in the centre of the development.
So there is a number for the Newbury Society where the whole thing becomes acceptable.
3 years ago, in our responses to previous applications, we were talking about, given the average size of the flats proposed at that time a development, and this is not a firm number, but we were looking at something in the order of 250 flats as opposed to the current 427.
Thank you very much. May I ask a question of Mrs. Ruth Hebbs as well? Thank you for your passion, especially about the. I understand. I understand. I met you in.
Train all gone.
I remember you being on the site visit. You talk quite enthusiastically about the existing Kennet Centre, whereas most people talk it down.
I don't.
Well, okay. Most people I speak to seem to talk it down.
Centre. Those people have let it run down. If you've got a house, you look after it. You don't let it leave.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the question for you is, given a better approach, which you seem to think is possible, how many do you think it would regenerate then by itself if it simply had been maintained properly? Is that what you're inferring?
I'm referring to you've got the lovely good shops that brought people in. You won't let them have a 10-year lease, so they disappear, but they would do very well in Newbury now.
Okay, you may just for reference, Chairman, because she's not near the speaker, I'm not sure how much of this is being broadcast.
Well, I've got quite a load.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it reaches the internet though.
Yeah, well, I just want the internet. I just want.
Excellent. So I don't know if you could just repeat that last business, especially because I think there was a salient point there for us. The bit about not allowing long enough leases to allow the businesses to reoccupy.
Waitrose, Iceland, everybody was upset that's gone. You wouldn't let them stay 10 years because you've let it run down and there's all leaks. For goodness sake, if I've got a house, I've got to look after it. People didn't mind that, and it did thrive. It did thrive, and it could thrive again if you look after the people that and all those other little people that are going to lose their jobs. I've got post-traumatic stress. I've got a chest problem because I live up by the station. I'd like to have that tested for fumes. I'd like to have that tested, that station, that motorway.
Can you just try and, answer the point which Councillor Abbs is asked?
Yes,
that's all. That's all. Because I think you did start with and then you moved on.
There didn't tell quite the truth. The traffic is bad day and night. It's all night where we live, and we're by the station. That one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, I think. I know Councillor Dick wanted to speak, but I think you had your hand up, didn't you, Councillor Vickers?
I did, Chairman. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's for Dr. Peacock, if I may. You've been showing us elevations which have to be part of an application, but would you not agree that what people experience is not the straight on elevation unless they have wings, but from the street view, apart from one or two places, would you not agree that the impact on people as they experience the streets as they are now, never mind what they're going to create through the middle, is not that bad? I would agree with you, but yeah, I'm asking your opinion before I say what I think, but would you not agree that on the whole, and you were on the site visit, the feeling was that most places, the impact will not be that great as the development will be experienced?
There are many places around Newbury where the impact will not be great. I mean, that's certainly true, but there are some places where it will be very great. There is that kind of variety. The reason for selecting the images was to give a sense of the development. By ghosting out the images in the submission, it didn't give a good impression of the development as a whole, and the darkened images that we presented, I think, give a better idea of the development, the actuality of the development, even though not all of those views would be experienced at once.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Peacock, thank you for those eloquent words. They're very clear and passionate. I was very interested in your parting shot. Do you want to develop your last sentence for us?
I found it quite interesting that in the latest alterations to the plans, when there was a reduction in height, there was an increase in the number of flats. flats, which left, well, perhaps all I should say is that the roof spaces of some of these blocks have not changed their structure at all. That they no longer contain flats, but the structure of the roofs has not changed.
Any other questions for, Councillor Gaines?
Thank you, Professor Peacock. I noticed you said about 66 car parking spaces being lost. Wasn't sure exactly where you were saying they were being lost from.
Okay, there are actually, as part of this development, there are about 80 existing car parking spaces being lost. 66 of those are next to the multi-storey car park, behind the wall with the plaques on it. The access is from the multi-storey car park, but they're not part of the multi-storey car park, and they are actually being demolished. In addition to those, you have the parking which exists up the ramp and on top of the Kennett Centre, which takes you to the figure of about 80. And obviously, in terms of dedicated parking spaces, this development only has 83 dedicated parking spaces. The rest of the parking allocation is met entirely by counting the 392 spaces of the existing multi-storey car park.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you very much. And just to come back on this, stay on this parking for a moment that's being lost. Do you by any chance know the purpose of that parking? Is it dedicated to people that work in the shops maybe, or?
I think West Berkshire Council is in the best position to answer that.
Well, obviously I can seek clarification from officers in a minute, but I was asking if you knew.
It is, or certainly has been, used by West Berkshire Council staff.
Up the ramp?
No.
Well, I'm referring to the stuff up the ramp.
Oh, sorry, up the ramp originally was supposed to service the shops. That was the purpose of the parking spaces up there. But in practice, that is something that the practice has changed along with the changing occupiers of the shops.
Okay, all right, I think.
So more fumes. Somebody's got to test that road.
Can I just add
Any more questions for the objectors at all? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hooker.
Thanks, Dr. Peacock. Thanks for your presentation. And as a part of your presentation, you sort of suggested that obviously the buildings are too high, and you know it's there about acceptable 5-6 stories or whatever. I guess you appreciate it. The end game, when all this is finished, the development has got to be financially viable. And in a perfect world, go for 5 stories or whatever. But would you agree that maybe the payoff might be it needs to be 6 stories, 7 stories? Otherwise, this won't go ahead at all. And more than likely, the shopping centre will remain derelict as it is now. It needs this financial input.
A lot of the benefits of the scheme as put forward by the officers are predicated on this being the only possible way in which the Kennett Centre could be redeveloped. And that's simply not the case. There are ways in which the Kennett Centre could be developed, sort of alternatives.
Further questions?
Yeah, I appreciate your statement, but at the end of the day, this committee is looking at what is being presented. And although I think your work has been done with your discussions previously of trying to convince the developer that there is another way, and he's looked at it and said, well, this is the way it's going to have to go, and that's what we're going to consider.
For example, if this scheme is not viable with any affordable housing, then this is the wrong scheme.
Yeah.
Okay, any other further questions, the members at all? No? Okay, thank you very much, you three. You can now sit down. Okay, if you return to your seats, and I'm now going to call upon Professor Robert Adam or Mr. Hugo Haig. I not done whether it's both of you or just, oh, okay, just your good self.
Professor Robert Adam will be joining me halfway
For
through
questions.
and be running through design later on.
Okay.
In the meantime, please, can we put up our first slide, if that's okay? So are we ready? Yep.
Yeah, when you're ready, please commence. Yeah.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving me the time to go through our scheme. I've got to thank the officers for having done such a comprehensive report on the application, which is very complicated. It goes to 580 odd documents. We've worked really hard, very closely with them to produce what you see before you this evening. When we look at this aerial picture, there's certain things that I'd like to point out. Obviously, you've got the Market Street development, and I've heard various references to height, but the tallest building in the Market Street development is 6 stories. There is 5 stories and 3 stories, and there is some 3-story housing. Likewise, in the Kennet Centre, there is 4-story offices on the corner near the View Cinema. The majority of the building is 3 stories or the equivalent thereof. And obviously we've got the View Cinema and the multi-story car park. You've obviously got the telephone exchange, which is a very tall building and the tallest building in Newbury. And we are well below that. We're very similar height to Sterling cables on our highest element. And obviously Sterling cables, I think, would be worth considering now, has just been brought forward as a windfall affordable housing site for 119 affordable units, which obviously wasn't in the game plan originally, but it does show that there's affordable housing being provided in the town centre as a windfall site. You've got the new multi-storey car park for the station, which of course is empty, pretty much empty at a weekend and empty during the evenings. You've got Parkway Shopping Centre. The demise of the Kennet Centre is pretty much resultant of the creation of the Parkway Shopping Centre and also the out-of-town retail up at the Tesco's roundabout, as well as the Sainsbury's new store when they moved out and moved into their new store. So
continue on, please.
The retail has suffered, obviously, and against the backdrop of online shopping, has really seen the end of it. I would like now, once we've got those elements into perspective, to pass over to Robert Adam on the design elements. So, Bob, could you run through and the next slide, please?
Sorry, thank you. I'm going to try not to repeat. I mean, the officers produced a very good summary, so I'm going to be fairly brief on some of these points because I'm covering some similar ground. And this obviously shows, as already been said, the poor state of the buildings of the Kennet Centre. So we just move to the next slide. I think obviously, it's very clear from what everybody's said that height and mass is really a critical issue. I think we must be very careful not to dwell too much on elevations. Elevations are technical drawings. I think, as one of the councillors already rightly raised, it's not what you see. Obviously, the height and mass go to viability, which I can't talk about. It's my job to deal with the design. If you look at the bottom set of elevations there, clearly there are tall buildings in this site. They're not skyscrapers; they're just relatively tall buildings, and they're within the range of tall buildings already been said within the centre. However, what matters is what is seen and what is seen from the street level. So if we could just go to the next slide. I'm going to go through these very briefly because you've already been through them. But the key issue with this is, and these are views that were chosen by officers. These are not just random views intended to show the scheme in its best light. These are verifiable views. And as you can see here, you get a glimpse. At the bottom view, you don't see it at all. Moving to the next one. Here we get a distant glimpse. And then the next one is well below the building line. And the next one. Here at the top one, you can't see it at all, and that's a glimpse. I'm not going to comment any more on these because you've already been through this. We'll just flip through these one after the other. But you see that if you look at the elevations, of course, what you see is a series of relatively tall buildings. But what really matters is what you see from the street. So let's move on to the next one. And the next, now we stop there. So obviously the issue, what I'm going to do with largely here is the design concentrating on the conservation area. The key issue with this is each one of these buildings has been designed specifically for its place. No two of these buildings are identical. We've taken great care to manage the materials, the solid to void ratio, the heights within the conservation area. So these are all the original sketches, and these are taken down to individual buildings within the conservation area. Moving to the next one. Similarly, as you see, all of these buildings have been specially designed, and all of them are relatively low scale and individual. The next one. I must stress this: the importance of this for conditions with the planning committee is the detail of these things is very important. 1 to 100 drawings is what you actually see. The ability for those to slip and become something value engineered down is extremely high. I don't say this in terms of developer at all. But however, what we have submitted, this is typical, what actually Historic England have called excellent sample details. And this is extremely important when you're looking at 1 to 100 drawings, that you actually see levels of this kind of detail to make sure that the quality and detail matches that of the conservation area. And then there's the next, I'd like to dwell on the next one. These are basically the same as the framework views you've had, but here we've added color. I just would point out that looking on the right-hand side here, there are 5 new buildings. I'm not sure that one would actually immediately guess that there were 5 new buildings in this looking at it. And if we go to the next slide, similarly here, there are 6 new buildings. And I hope that this demonstrates the care that we've taken with the conservation. And you also notice that you do get you get corner glimpses occasionally of some of the buildings behind, but at eye level and at the street level, what you're actually seeing are a consistent street design. The next slide. I mean, again, you've seen these, but I'm just going to draw attention to these. On the top, we have a view from looking into the new street, the primary new street, and they have a view looking out. And here, looking out, which you can now see, which you can't see, is the view of the clock tower. And then the bottom, again, we have a view in from the inside. I mean, I want to be clear that when you're actually within this development, when you're within this new street, you will see the tall buildings. It is a new street. I'm being completely clear about this. There is one view on the bottom right where you do get a view of these taller buildings. That's actually from the post office site. If that's developed, you won't see that. And we've quite specifically provided an arch to stop the end of this street to actually give some sort of visual arrest as you go down the street. I think really I'm going to stop now, but that's effectively covers. I hope it's going to convince you that we put considerable care into design. One more thing I would add before I sit down is that you will see glimpses of the tops of these buildings. The thing about buildings is when you see them, you actually do see the top of buildings. Together with your officers, we've taken great care to make sure that these are broken up, and you actually have, even when you do get a glimpse of the tops of these buildings, they're carefully detailed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you coming back to continue or your 10 minutes?
Just to finish up, if that's all right. Thank you. So the scheme benefits, and a lot of these have been listed by Matthew, but what we'd say here is
1 minute remaining.
To just quickly go through it. We provide 2.3 acres of open space within our scheme on a site that has got 100% site cover by an existing building. And I think that is a lot of which is to public benefit. It's the new street, the alleyways, to be able to put a new street into Newbury and these connection points is a very key benefit for everybody. We have over £3 million worth of SIL and Section 106 payments that will benefit the community. We need the scale to make this scheme work, to make it economically viable. We have tried extremely hard to bring this scheme forward for you this evening, and it is every little bit matters to us. We're building a community. In our scheme, we have residence amenities, we have meeting places.
Can you conclude, please?
Suffice to say, we want to work with the locals to minimise disruption of the construction, and I would urge you as committee members to support your officers and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can both return to the nectum and look round the table, and I see Councillor Vickers first as a question, and then Councillor Foot.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for that presentation, particularly the design. I think was very useful to have from Professor. My question, though, is to Mr. Haig. You talked right at the end there about benefiting the community, but often developments like this, which are primarily flats, end up being occupied by young families. I couldn't see anything in your design that really are facilities for young families. And how would you, as landlord, what would you do as landlord to actually promote and nurture a sustainable community for all types of resident? Because being a town centre community, there seems to be very little, even in the rooftop gardens, the way they're set out, for the younger families.
As part of our presentation, we didn't actually get to one of the last slides on the presentation, and that shows at ground level all the tenant facilities that exist that we're putting into the scheme, and very little has been discussed here. And if you took our other scheme that we've done in Reading, we have 56,000 square feet of tenant amenities in a 300,000 square foot scheme. In this scheme, we have probably a bit more than that. We have ground floor gyms, tenant hubs, meeting rooms, and facilities that will be used by the residents.
Are you right, Councillor Foot?
Thank you very much. Could you tell me what the height is for Block S, please?
Block S is the 8-storey block. The actual height, I'm afraid I can't. It's on the plans.
Okay, I measured it on the scale and I came to a rough approximation, about 98 metres. Does that sound correct to you? Sorry, no, 98 feet.
I'm sorry. Matthew, if you address it to Matthew, I'm sure he'll be able to. I've got the plans here, but
okay.
I could have it.
But just for clarity, you did mention that it'll be the same height as the tallest block at Stirling Gardens.
I can tell you. So the tallest block on Block S is 30.7 metres high.
Thank you.
And if you take Stirling Cables, it is 29.85. So there's just under a metre difference.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have your one? You didn't. Anti-Arthrage.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. That's a question to Professor Adam. Professor Adam, you mentioned that the elevation view would not be the right view to pick up the view of the building, and you showed us some nice pictures of the Bartholomew Street street view pictures. For this committee assess, do you have any pictures of the same street view for this development from the Cheap Street, from the Bear Lane, and from the Marcus Street?
I don't think we have a view directly down Bear Lane. We have a series of views, of wireframe views, which I think were shown with the original presentation, which can come up again. These were the views that we were asked to produce by the council to try and demonstrate the appearance of the scheme from as many different places as possible.
Okay.
So I don't think we've got one directly down Bear Street. What we do have is we have one from a vacant site next to it, where you actually stand further back. When that site is developed, which I assume it will be developed, what will actually happen is that the arch, which we've shown at the end, will become more dominant. So in Bear Street, I know that that's the case in that case. But I think all the other views are available. I mean, they can come up again on the slides if necessary. But these were the views that were specifically chosen by the council to get the maximum idea of the impact of the development.
Okay, so you were prepared to have those pictures, but you're mentioning that the council officers have not recommended producing it for us. Yeah. Okay. So we'll come back to the officers later.
Question? Other questions, members? Right, Councillor Gaines and then Councillor Wollaston.
A question for Mr. Haig. So, carry on from what Councillor Vickers said about amenity space. Would you consider having a soft play area in one of the retail units, given that actually we're talking about 3 and 2 bedroom houses or apartments, and therefore there may be small children in those apartments?
Yes, of course. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wollaston.
Can I just explore a little bit more the retail facilities you're proposing, and also the, again, expansion on what you just said to Councillor Gaines?
Yes.
So are they, from what I understand, I think they're all small units.
Yes, what we have is 34 small units. They're approximately somewhere between 500 and say 750 square foot each. We're going to do, as per the submission and viability submission, they're due to be built to a white box standard. So rather than shell and core, they'll be done to a plastered and painted finish. So they'll be ready for any tenant to be able to move into without any extra expense. And unlike the Market Street retail offering, which is done to shell and core with no air conditioning and relatively unattractive space because it has quite a lot of extra cost for a tenant to as a burden to move into, that wouldn't be the case on ours. Most of them are serviced from the internal service yards within our building, so they can be accessed from the back and serviced from the back. And on top of that, virtually all of them will have awnings that go out into the street space. So you get to utilize, not only do you have your own shop space within the 500 square feet, but you can then use the street space for storage. And if you look at this site plan, you'll see a storage space for all the carts or whatever that may be required to make that happen.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you. Professor, it's a question for you, or it's a series of questions. It's really goes to your core knowledge. You said what you see, what is seen. Officers chose locations for max effect, not chosen for best for the development. In various parts of what you said, you made those comments. So I'd like to go back to the present, the cycle that you went through of the images, because each of the locations, and Bear Lane's the really clear one, if you took 5 yards to the right, 5 yards to the left, the perspective, what you see changes dramatically. Yes. No, okay. And yeah, the reason for that is someone else mentioned Bear Lane. I did some basic trigonometry on that to try and work out the height of the building and what would be seen. And I'd just like you to confirm that, in fact, the locations are certainly not chosen to show the, well, in fact, they don't show the best for the development, or rather the opposite. They do seem to show a significant for the best possible locations for the development. And if it's not Bear Lane that you can consider, then I want you to consider the location which is off the canal bridge. And the officers gave you a spot several meters over the bridge, so you're further down. You're starting to sink. Therefore, and whereas the best to see the worst of the development, the best place to see the worst of the development would you not agree, be on the top of the bridge?
Well, I mean, dealing with the first point, the key point is it's true that, in a lot of cases, if you move in one direction, you might see less, another direction, you might see more. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, that's got to be the case. The only way you're going to get over that is with moving visual images. So I mean, there's no question that these were not chosen. Be clear about the first point. These were chosen at specific points, and we could have moved the points to other places. The idea was to give a synoptic view of the different views you could get. Some of them show it in a, yeah, well, I wouldn't say a bad light. Some of it show it in a less complimentary light, and some in a more complimentary light. There are quite a number of them actually, and so
there are. I would agree. So I just focus on this one then. Your officers chose locations for max effect, i.e., you were inferring with that statement that they chose the ones that would make the development look in its worst light. But you now seem to be clawing back from that.
No, it's a maximum effect to get the clearest perception. Be clear what I said. The clearest perception of what it will be like. You in the end you have to choose particular views.
You do, and okay, so it's great. So let's bring up the Bear Lane image that we have. You must have it on the screen. I can't bring it up because I've not got control of the keyboard. Please. So thank you very much, Denise. Can we please bring up the image? That was referred to in the applicant's presentation, to be clear.
It's only an ARPA. The one on the bottom right.
Yeah. No, not that one from Bear Lane. There's another one which not that one. Bottom right. No, that's not the one I'm referring to though. No. Which was not in their presentation, that one. We'll have to go for officers that clarify. I thought there was one. Here we one from Berlin. Where is it? There we go. Thank you very much. Yes. I knew it had been shown somewhere. So here we are showing perspective down Bear Lane with the BT Tower basically blocking your development. Would you agree?
Yes, to be honest, I didn't actually form these views, so I'm slightly cautious about being absolutely definite.
No, it's just your professional opinion on does your development sit behind that?
The truth is either it does or it doesn't.
Indeed.
That's Bear Lane. That's not the Bear Lane one.
Okay, let me ask it another way. Do you know Bear Lane, by the way?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay, so excellent.
But I have to say, I tend to know it closer to rather than further away.
Well, exactly. This would be my point. So if you were to walk forward from this chosen point that was made by the officers to where the KFC is, or Johnson's Cleaners, I suppose, would be better. That you'd still have most of your development blocked by BT Tower because it's still there. However, if you move to the KFC corner, the whole landscape opens up and you would see a significant amount of your development. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm sure that's probably right.
Well, I'm
sure that's probably right because I'm having to mentally navigate something which I'm not.
I'd hope to do some mock-ups myself and present them, but I can't.
I think a better assessment of that would actually be that wireframe, which actually, if we can go back to that one. Because I deliberately chose that one as the very last one.
Indeed. Let's go back to that one then.
Because actually, that's the one that actually, from a relatively close view, shows the maximum number of buildings behind.
Would you, well, while we're doing that then, would you not agree then, if you get too close, everything gets hidden by the buildings that are
indeed, that's the main, and indeed, that's one of the main points I made, precisely that.
So this is taken, your bottom right image is taken from where the old post office
is. Yes, that's right, yes.
Okay, so if you go 10 or 15 yards to the right, which is where Bear Lane is.
Yes.
In fact, you wouldn't be looking in this direction at all. You'd be looking essentially through the Catherine wheel up to the 8-story block that would sit behind it. So yes, you would be right. So rather than what it shows there, I'm asking if you to agree or disagree. You would actually see the mass as it really is of this development.
If you would, interestingly, if you say that, because this is one of the views we did amongst ourselves. If you were one of the reasons for putting that arch over the end of Bear Lane was specifically we realised you could see buildings behind that because you get a long distance down Bear Lane. You're absolutely correct. The reason we put that arch in there was not something we asked for commercially, I have to say. The reason it's a rather expensive piece of stuff. The reason we put that arch in there was actually to form a visual stop at the end of Bear Lane. So because we recognise the fact that as you get further away, I mean, this is a kinetic situation. You're moving around all the time, and so you'll get different views and you'll perceive things in different ways. I mean, the interesting thing about this is this actually does show a fair amount of bulk of buildings behind. It's one of the places it does do that. So one of the reasons we're recognising that, one of the reasons we put the arch over the end of Bear Lane was to act as a visual stop. So you'd be aware of the fact there was something behind this and that was in the foreground.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's a great architectural trick which you're doing. It's a lovely thing. However, I do want to get to the point here. Do you know the height of the Catherine Wheel by any chance?
Not off the top of my head, but it's a relatively low building.
It's 7 meters.
Yeah.
So if you go to the right, and if we take the number you just used for the 8-story building, what was it, 30 odd meters? So, and the 7-story are what height? Which are, because it's, left of that is 7-story, and the 6-story. So what are we talking about, the range and the mass that we're looking at just by going a few feet to your right or meters to your right here in this image, when you're looking left through the monument, through the Catherine Wheel onto the block of buildings? Would you say you would see most of them en masse then?
Actually, you give me a map. Actually, from a map, it's quite useful. Actually, I've got one of the early ones here.
I'm not deliberately trying to catch you out. I'm just trying to get.
I quite understand. I mean, I mean, the point's well taken, and the issue is that you are going to see a whole series of different views from different places.
Yeah.
So as you look down, the highest building is actually back here. Yes.
Yes, and that's that one.
Yes, exactly. So in fact, I think I'm right in saying, so stop me if I'm wrong on this one, is that what you're seeing, just at the little building, the bottom right, what you're seeing actually rather disappearing off the top of the building there, that is the tallest building. Is that correct?
No.
Not the one in the foreground, the one immediately behind it. Okay, there's one further story, the one behind that again. So what you've got is, if you like, is quite right. What you get is stepping back from that. You are going to get an extra floor.
Yes.
So no, I mean, your point is absolutely correct. Is that as you move from different parts, you're going to see different things, and there will be moments, and this is probably one of the moments. The reason we chose this, there will be moments when you actually do perceive, if you like, disappearing into the background. You will see some of the taller buildings, and you're absolutely right. Your observation is absolutely correct. That when you're close to, particularly in the conservation area, you're simply not going to see it at all. So it's, there are different views. Now, the local authority have chosen certain views which we looked at, and we could have chosen other ones, but obviously there's only a certain number you can choose.
Okay, well, I won't take the time of stepping through each image and saying how it could be presented different, because that'd be wasting our time.
Okay, right. I'm going to move on to Councillor Vickers. So I think you had a question.
Yeah, I'm just coming back to the theme that Councillor Wollaston started, which is, the retail offer. Because I think one of the reasons, lots of people have told me that Market Street, and indeed there's a little development over the other side of the station, which has been vacant for ages. But what we notice is that there's no toilet fittings. It's not fitted out. So are you saying, I wasn't clear with your answer to Councillor Wollaston, are you going to say that you are going to do the same, or that you will be fitting it out? Because I can understand if a retailer's looking to choose somewhere to go, they want to have the toilets there and reasonable, everything ready to go, apart from their own, individualized fitting out.
Yes, they're completely fitted out, so you can move in straight away. So they've got air conditioning, they've got rubbish collection stations, and they've got fully painted and ready to move into straight away.
Wonderful. I wish that was a legal requirement, I must admit.
Okay, is there any other questions around the table at all? No? Okay, thanks very much for your presentation and answering questions. I now move on to the ward members. Councillor Coulson and Councillor Sturgis, and I presume you're going to split the 10 minutes between you, are you? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. So we're speaking this evening in our role as ward councillors for Newbury Central. There is a clear and overwhelming sentiment within the local community against this proposal, which you will have seen from your papers. Residents have voiced strong objections, reflecting deep concerns, particularly about its potential negative impact on Newbury's heritage and character. As long-term residents of Newbury, and for me personally, as someone who also grew up here, we share these concerns. Between us, we will cover 4 areas of harm arising from this proposal: scale, housing, parking, and construction. The size and scale of the proposed development is grossly out of sync with a historic town centre. The report notes as such, stating the scale of proposed development within the centre of the site would harm the significance of the Newbury Town Centre conservation area and the 30 listed buildings within it. This is not just a matter of taste, but of principle. Conservation areas are legally protected to safeguard the distinctiveness of places like Newbury. The drawings in the report illustrate how the development would dominate, overshadow and dwarf the listed buildings around it, and the site visit highlighted this contrast even more starkly. Once the harm is done, it will be irreversible. Indeed, the Conservation Officer states in paragraph 12.44 that the harm is real and serious and carries significant weight in the planning balance.
So with regard to housing, the report states in paragraph 11.4 that given the level of need for affordable housing, the policy requirement of 30% units at 20% lower rate levels is justifiable and appropriate. Indeed, another significant town centre development at the former Jewson site in Pound Street has just been approved, considered entirely viable, and will deliver 30% affordable housing. As we've heard, 30% applied to Eagle Quarter would be 128 affordable rent flats, and yet it will not deliver a single one because it would apparently not be viable at 30%, or even at the measly 4.4% or 19 flats that this application started out with. And as we've also heard, it's even questionable at 0%. As one resident who wrote to us said, if the development is not viable with that many flats and business areas that it can't sustain affordable housing, then the whole development should be in question. Given the significant need in West Berkshire for affordable housing, I see this as a gross failure of this development and one that should have been given great rather than significant weight in the planning balance.
So parking has also been highlighted by many residents as a major concern. And as someone living near the town centre with on-street parking, I know how finely balanced parking in and around the town can be. As the application stands, the lack of dedicated parking provision for residents has a potential to drive people to park in local residential streets, leading to issues with availability of spaces and increased congestion and access issues. The report also acknowledges that the Market Street or station car park was not designed for and is not attractive for use by visitors such as shoppers, and upgrades will be required, which will come at a considerable cost to the council.
Our final point is about construction. We heard during the site visit on Tuesday that it would take around 6 months to demolish the Kennet Centre and then a further 3 years to construct Eagle Quarter. That's at least 3.5 years of noise, mess, traffic and business disruption in our town. How effectively this can or will be mitigated, we don't know. But as it stands, it's left to pre-commencement condition number 23 for a construction method statement, which is needed to, and I quote, safeguard the amenity of adjoining land uses and occupiers and in the interests of highway safety. And it is necessary, and I quote again, because insufficient information accompanies this application. The developer has supplied endless detail on many aspects, including viability, but nothing to date on construction, which begs the question as to why. How bad will it be? We don't know yet, and members are being asked to make a critical decision this evening with no information on this important aspect of the development. We haven't spoken to anyone who is against the redevelopment of the Kennet Centre in principle, and we all want to see such an important site revitalised. However, development should not come at the expense of real and significant harm to the Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area and its 30 listed buildings. The many in West Berkshire in desperate need of affordable housing, deterioration in our town centre car parking arrangements, and unknown impact during at least 3.5 years of construction. In our view, the Section 106 contributions suggested to mitigate the first 3 of these points are woefully inadequate. The level of harm to the conservation area is higher than stated, and the total absence of affordable housing should be given great rather than significant weight. With these relatively small changes, we believe that the planning balance would come down clearly on the other side, and that's why we urge members to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question for ward members. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councillors, friends, both fellow residents of Westfield. It's not too far away from where we're sitting and where this development is. You started off, Louise, by saying that you felt there was overwhelming support. I'm wondering whether the people that we've heard from and the objectors we've seen are truly representative of the whole population of this town. I mean, those of us that are, like myself, nearing 80 are not going to actually live with this for very long, whatever's built here. Have you, for example, asked your own children what they think of it? Have we asked the people that are in the what's called intermediate market, where half of their take-home pay is going in private rent? I mean, is this a representative view that you're presenting to us, do you believe?
Well, it's the view that we've heard from our residents. I have spoken to my children and they do think it's too big, just like I do. I don't know about you, Louise.
Yeah, it's certainly the view that I've heard from residents as well, Councillor Vickers. I have a 9-year-old who just wanted to stipulate that the cinema remained, but I don't have any other children to comment on.
Perhaps.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, councillors. You mentioned economic impact in a kind of roundabout way, but you referred to it in terms of the 3.5 years of disruption in the town. Extending out from that, though, of course, we have approximately 45 businesses operating within the Kennet Centre today, or within the Red Line. Do you have any thoughts? Or maybe thoughts is wrong. It's not really a direct question linked to what you presented, is it? But how would you link the loss of the existing businesses to what you've already said to us?
Well, obviously, the existing businesses will not be there during once demolition has happened, and yeah, those will be lost altogether. Clearly.
Thank you.
Any further questions at all? Oh yeah, sorry, Councillor Williston.
I was going to say the Kennet Centre is dying, but my view is it's dead. Do your residents at all have any thoughts of what other alternatives there might be?
So the people that we've heard from, they're not opposed to the redevelopment of the Kennet Centre, and that's not what we've said tonight. It's the scale and the scope of the proposed development that this is the issue. I think all of the residents that we've heard from understand that revitalising this, critical key town centre site, it's absolutely key, but it's the way in which that is done which is causing the challenges here, not the redevelopment of the centre per se.
And I would agree with what Dr. Peacock said earlier, which was there's an infinite number of schemes that could have been brought forward for this site. This particular one, obviously, is the one that you are tasked with deciding on tonight. But all sorts of other schemes could have been suggested at different heights, different densities, that probably would have made money in different ways.
Okay, I think exhausted the questions, so thanks very much. We are now been on this meeting for 2.5 hours. We've now got to obviously return to standing orders, and we've also got to get the opportunity to speak to the respective officers, any elaboration of points, questions of clarity. And then we will then enter the debate. So would you wish that we have a 5 or 10-minute recess at this point?
I think this is a good point, Chairman, to which to do so. I don't think we can go without a break right through till potentially 10:30.
Well, that's right. I was going to say we've still got a possible another 2 hours anyway. So, yeah.
Chairman, if it is okay, we can go for a break after the questions to the officer because this is all presentation. We have questions in mind.
If you feel
So
that's not
before going on to the debate,
okay.
we can have a.
I'm asking for your views. I've got no strong views. It's just a suggestion from myself. Right, Councillor Dick.
I agree with what's just been said, and we've now wasted 3 minutes talking about a 5-minute break. So there is a natural break after we've got all the information from officers, because then it's straight into the debate.
Okay. So members, I think we need to start asking the questions of the appropriate officers, providing we return back to, you were proposing to return.
I was going to ask you a question, but I'll also propose to return to that normal procedure. Yes.
Thank you very much. Does that meet all agreement? Okay, right. Question first and then question for you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being patient with us, Sam, this evening, because the question is for you, or questions are for you rather. In the report, it mentions Parkway, and it's been mentioned a few times tonight, but it actually has an inaccuracy in it, I believe, because it talks about it having 0 vacancy. Can you confirm that in fact that is not correct?
Thanks. So, yeah, this information comes from CoStar, which is a retail property market analysis. At the time that this was, that these comments were provided, I believe that is correct. Parkway, I believe, has had 0% vacancy at some points in the past.
Well, I don't want to disagree with you publicly, but anybody that's been living here would have known that there's one unit that's never been occupied, so it can never ever have been 0%. So
this is at any given time. Sorry, so 0% not across a time period, 0% on a single snapshot.
There's one unit that's never been rented out. So there's a corner unit. I'm sure we all know it. It's next to the Honesty Cafe. So at most recent count, which is relevant to what we're looking at this evening, in fact, I counted just yesterday 5.5 units, and well, third unit actually, because a third of the what used to be John Lewis, which is now Next, is still empty. It's just a shell, isn't it, that's helping Primark build. But so when your report says, and the inference of the exemplar state of the Parkway development and how it's great for Newbury and so on and so forth, isn't it all based off of that inaccurate data to start with? The delta between how good Parkway is and how good this development might be is not as great as is indicated here, and therefore the weighting given to it is not accurate either. So it should be stepped down in terms of its weighting.
So yeah, it might be the case that there has been a unit that has never been let out. I say that the CoStar data is not perfect, but the salient point here is that there is a very low vacancy rate in Parkway.
So what is 5.5 units of Parkway in terms of vacancy then? Because obviously it's not 0.
I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head right now.
So, gosh, I'll let someone else go for a moment while I contemplate.
Sorry, is that a further question?
Let why I contemplate now. I shall let someone else have a go.
I think, well, I've got other members that wish to ask questions, so I'm going to go to Anthony Farage first.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, question to Mr. Robbins. I think we will come to you a number of times, Mr. Robbins. Please bear with us, because the entire premise of this application is based on the viability. So I have a number of questions on this viability, Mr. Chairman. My questions are not to find, as Councillor Abb said, I was going to pick up that point, the 0% occupancy. So it's not to find loopholes or holes in this report, but to question the viability assessment. The first question on this one is, Mr. Robbins, it says in the report that councillors employed an independent financial viability assessment consultant. But in the report from Rapley's, which is there in the document section, it says from the applicant, it says they have been instructed by the Locklear Newbury Limited to provide an affordable housing. But in that report, they've alluded to the Dixon Cell position as well. So my question is it really independent assessment the council has asked for? Because if you're independent, then Rapley's wouldn't be able to get hold of the Dixon Sale position of the viability, and they've compared it with figures, and it is not, according to me, independent. So can you please elaborate how you came up with this whole viability? And other supplementary on this one is, did you kind of fully take that position in terms of their assessment and pasted all over the report at face value? Or did you question at all some of the contents of that?
I'm going to ask Deborah to answer that question, if you don't mind.
I'm happy to.
Matthew is okay.
So Rapley's is the representative of the applicants. They produced a viability report on behalf of the applicants. Dixon Cell is the council's instructed consultant. We consult them independently. They were consulted on the previous application. They provide the council, we provide the applicants commercially sensitive data, their viability report to Dixon Cell. Dixon Cell perform their review of this as an independent company and advise us as officers who don't have the specific knowledge on viability of what their view is of that. The Rapley's document you're referring to, which has both the Rapley's position and the Dixon Cell position, is an executive summary that is produced in line with the PPG. That is something that we can boil down and show to the public. These are the figures in the viability. It becomes that there are sensitive data, commercially sensitive data, that can't be shared in the public realm. Therefore, we have an executive summary where Rapley's have put their position in and shown what the council's position, because we've shared our assessment with the applicants. So we've shared Dixon Cell's position with the applicants, and they've produced this document to show you clearly the two sets of figures.
Sorry, Chairman, I know this is an executive summary, it states in the document, but my question is more pointed towards how did Rapley's get hold of Dixon Cell's position and they compared it to provide an executive summary. So if it is an independent assessment, my thought on this one, correct me on this one, the Rapley's have provided on behalf of the applicants an viability survey that came to the council offices. You came up with Dixon Cell to go and assess independently their viability position, and that was provided to the offices. Then somehow it goes to Rapley's and they provided a comparative analysis.
Yeah, we shared it with the applicants. They requested to us what our assessment was, and we've shared it. So they can have a look at the assumptions. If there were disagreements, for instance, not in the figures or anything like that, we would then be sharing that data to show you we don't agree with your data on this and this and this, and you need to work harder to change the scheme in this way. So it's not unusual for a local planning authority to share its consultant's report with the applicants.
Okay.
And that's how we've provided Rapley's with the Dixon Cell assessment.
So just to point out, just for my clarification, so Rapley's and the applicants have commercial sensitive information assessed by Dixon Cell, which they know from this summary, but for some reasons, they've not told us because this is commercially sensitive. So this is the understanding I have. Like, we don't have commercial sensitive information, but the applicants do have access to this information, all of them from the
So the commercially sensitive information is from the applicants. We can't share what that is. It has the commercial sensitivity. We have to adhere to the legislation on sharing data in that way. They've asked for it not to be published. The planning practice guidance provides the avenue that we adhere to, that we can produce an executive summary to show that data and to assist the applicants in keeping their commercially sensitive data out of the market. So it's a very widely accepted practice in terms of viability. It's in the planning practice guidance from the government, and it's something that we have strove to provide you an executive summary with as much information as possible that we can share.
Okay, Chairman, I'm not entirely convinced, but I'll take that response as what officers have.
Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman, and perhaps a good time to say thank you to everyone who's made presentations since I last thanked people, and particularly to Matthew, who's the centre of attention. And since certainly the heritage issues, I'm sure, are exercising us all, and we'll come to those after the break, as it were. Although, can we remind ourselves that Kennett's got one T in this respect, and let's not twist that. I have a question about the economics of it, and it may just have been loose talk, but we were told that that this new development, the advice the council has been given from within, this new development will make a significant improvement to the economy, both of Newbury itself and West Berkshire. And clearly that's something we're all very interested in. But then you said, well, it's going to be better than what's there. That's not a very high bar to me. And there are plenty of good things about the Kennett Centre, but there's plenty of bad things as well. So how ambitious are we with this development for the economic future of our town and of our community? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think in terms of what could possibly be put in this site for economic benefits, this is just about as good as it gets in regards to a variety of ground floor uses, creation of an entire new street, obviously increase of number of residential units, but the main thing being small scale office space of a high quality and the retail units, which I mean, would struggle to understand what else you could put in on this site that would be much more in keeping or effective in terms of a retail benefit to the town centre, other than a large mix of retail spaces, especially like I say with the awnings and the new street essentially for Newbury. So yeah, from an economic standpoint, its benefits for the town centre, I would say this is an excellent scheme. Yeah, for this site.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Foote.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I've got a very specific question, really, I guess, for Matthew again. On page 16 of the pack, when we're talking about consultations, I noticed that Thames Water did not respond within the 21 days. Could I ask, have we had any communication with Thames Water about drainage?
My understanding is, as a council, we have not, but the applicants have approached them as part of their sustainable drainage conversations and things like that. Thames Water are a statutory undertaker. They will need to provide the water infrastructure if the development is proposed. Condition 49 states no dwelling shall be occupied until confirmation has been submitted that the network upgrades can accommodate the additional demand, and the infrastructure phasing plan has been agreed with Thames Water. So although we haven't had a response from Thames Water, we've anticipated this as an issue and tried to round it off with our conditions. It's something going forward, if it approval, they'd have to provide it as the undertaker, and our conditions make sure that we see that information and understand it's coming in and it's going to be in place for when the development is to be accommodated.
Is that a further question?
Yeah, if I could just come back on that, just to inform the committee, obviously, that this is a very high priority for me and my ward of Newbury Clay Hill, because as everybody knows, there have been considerable flood and drainage issues in the town. And I am disappointed that we as a committee have not had any representation from Thames Water when I have residents in my ward, and forgive me if I'm going off track a little bit, who've had raw sewage in their front, back gardens and underneath their properties because the antiquated and out-of-date sewerage facilities in this town, or provision, I should say, in this town. And I think it's beholden upon us at this committee to make further, better representation, so that at these sort of hearings, when we're talking about 427 dwellings, of which there are 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, that could potentially have quite an impact on that issue. So maybe we could make note of that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to remind members that I've still got another 5 names, and obviously some of you are coming back on further clarification. So I thought it just fair to let you know, and I am taking note of when hands do go up, because I know your hand's gone up 2 or 3 times, Adrian Abs. So Councillor Abs, you are next on the list, actually.
Okay, I'll get all 15 questions out in one go then. Mr. Robbins, back to you again. Obviously, the economics of this is one of the reasons we may want to go redevelopment the whole thing. So let's examine some of what you've just said, I think, in a bit more detail, specifically office space. So, and correct me if I've misunderstood, but are there any dedicated parking spaces associated with the offices that are to be let? I couldn't find it. And would you agree that if there is no parking space available for an office, then generally it's not considered a desirable office to go rent?
So, Paul, I'm not aware that there is any dedicated parking spaces for the office.
No, there's no dedicated space for the offices. As with all offices in the town centre, there is plenty of public car parking available for office workers.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So I've personally never come across the fact that you present, so to speak, which is that it would make it an
Let's carry on, because you're saying this is normal and none of the offices in the town centre have spaces, and I agree with that, because I used to have a office on Northbrook Street, and that office I used to have is still empty. And why did I move out as a business? Because I'm a businessman. Because the council wanted to charge me, and this was quite a few years ago, over £1,000 per employee per parking space per annum. So actually, the reason we have, an issue with offices that are, and there's lots of them that are not let and have been now converted to this, that, and the other, is that the cost of the parking, when you put it on top of the rent and on top of the rates, is such that having an office in a town centre without parking becomes unaffordable for business. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I would agree. Well, there may very well be an issue of parking for offices in the town centre. I would not agree that that is the primary reason for the conversion of offices in the town centre. The primary reason, and the reason that we support this, the office provision put forward in this scheme compared with the office provision you've got in the town centre, which does have relatively high vacancy rates, is quality. The most important thing when in regards to vacancy rates after the location of the space is the quality of the space. And what you've got in Newbury, where you've got older buildings converted into office space, it's not as desirable as new purpose-built space.
Okay, I'll accept that. There is the issue of, because it's an economic, argument you're saying is we're going to be better off. Do you know the actual number of businesses operating within the red line of this development?
Do you mean currently?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, it's 46. I went round and counted today. So what provision in your head when you was making this decide, well, we're going to make, how many business units will be available in the new development?
34, is it?
34. So we're taking 46 businesses and which exist and turning it into 34 that might get rented.
But the net number of employees would be much higher than it is.
No, but which is also an estimate, because you can't guarantee that. I can guarantee go and ask how many people work in a shop today. I can't guarantee what might happen in 3.5, 4 years' time. So that's an assumption, is it not?
Yes, that's right. But everything would be an assumption. I mean, you can make a pretty good sort of bets, and they are from a commercial perspective, that those units will not be vacant. Otherwise, it wouldn't be
using
I
just want to clarify, using the two numbers that we've just established, we will actually have less, basically, businesses operating in the same area. Well, I mean, we could each go round. We did go on a tour, and I don't know if anybody else did, but I went around afterwards and added them all up. There were 46. Now, some of those are charity-type businesses and so on, so I'm sure they're not. But at the end of the day, business rates are business rates, aren't they? Except for charities. So I mean, just all I'm looking for the offer is clarity on how many businesses, if I'm fully occupied, I can go with. And if it's 30 odd, I seem to be going negative, not positive.
Chairman, we're looking at the development in front of us, not some theoretical other development. I'm not sure that this is.
No,
This is the development in front of
I'm
us.
just about to ask the officers if there is actually a figure you're able to supply, because I think it would be easier just to mention to the member that you're not aware the exact number at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'd need to defer to Matthew on this one.
Okay, Matthew.
I don't have that figure to hand, but I expect the applicant who sat in the room might be able to assist us with that figure.
Unfortunately, that's not allowed, as the chairman.
Oh, then it wouldn't help the committee.
Because it is in the constitution, it is written, you have power if you want, without having to suspend standing order to ask questions to.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm a bit shocked that we don't know how many businesses we're losing and how many businesses we're potentially gaining and being able to add up.
Councillor Abs, I have in my power, if I so wish, to ask to suspend standing orders.
You don't have, you have power. In the constitution, it is written right now, you have power if you wish to ask question to the applicant directly without having to suspend standing order.
I can do it.
You can do it.
Okay, I've just been advised by the legal officer, I don't need to suspend standing orders, but I can formally ask the question of your good self. So are you in a position to be able to answer that question of Councillor Abs? Yes.
Well, this is why I was asking the question: are we gaining or are we losing? Do you mind if are we allowed to?
Sorry, no.
Can I ask through you, Chairman? Because the number, because he said within the Kennet Centre, and I'm looking within the red line of the development. Is the number still correct that he just gave?
I think it's appropriate at this moment in time to move on, I'm afraid. Okay, thanks very much for the question, Councillor Abs. Right, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you. Matthew, you referred very briefly to the Section 106 contributions. My question is really, it's one question, but it includes bits about several of these that are listed. And the first one to go to is, because we've been talking about it, is the viability review. So are we saying that basically the decision will have been made and, you know, we will have substantially completed the build out before we are able to review the viability assessment? And is that a normal thing? So that's question number one. While you think of the answers, just a couple of others I wanted to raise. The public open space, in reading the report, it talks about a figure with or without the new streets, outdoor facilities and without. I would hope that we're going without, but even if we include just what's within the development on the roof spaces, which are at various levels and in various blocks, I still don't think that is adequate for this development. So is there anything more we can do to secure either an additional financial contribution to public open space off the site, or to pinpoint in some detail things like facilities available to all the residents of the new development that may be actually only positioned in one block on that particular roof for particular age groups? I'm particularly concerned about the toddlers, the preschool age group, and whether this is a suitable development for them. So can we do more on the public open space, section 106? And finally, on healthcare, I'm really not happy that we just bung 262,000 to Bob and say, well, you sort it out. We've just had Eastfield Surgery say it's going to move out of town to Wash Common. I'm really concerned that this new development is just going to be an impossible burden on the NHS unless the developer can somehow provide space and we can proactively find a local surgery or some way of providing a level of primary health care. Can we do that? So those are three aspects of the section 106 that I'm not happy about.
So starting off with the viability review, that is something that's covered in the update report. It's something that we want to continue discussions whilst we draft the 106 agreement as to the trigger for this. It is very normal for there to be an early review. That early review, if build costs, for instance, changes, the landscape of development changes, the cost of development changes, it can be a way of increasing the amount of affordable housing. It's traditionally been at, I think, 25% as put in the report. However, the applicants have advised that it may be a later trigger might be advantageous because it might show the development's more successful, and therefore it may be that the profit margins or the development costs may have gone down in other aspects, and the resultant residual value may go up, which may provide us with an opportunity to deliver affordable housing. So it's in there quite normally as a kickback, because these are shown at a period of time. We have to make an assessment earlier in the year, and they're a snapshot in that aspect. So when the development comes forward, we can deal with how that changes going forward, and that's what that provision provides for. In terms of the new street, the amenity space isn't counting the new street. It's not private amenity space. It's shared space. It's for everyone to walk through. It's not exclusively for the future prospective residents of that development sites. It's not green infrastructure either, but it is obviously an additional public realm, so we have to treat it in that regard. In terms of the development in the open space, my understanding it's a campus development, so any amenity space can be shared. So if you're on the west side of the development, you can go and enjoy the right side and the east side, and you have accesses throughout the development, and that's something we can secure through management plans and things like that, so people can enjoy the entire space. In terms of addressing for a specific age group or such on that, I don't believe it's been addressed within the application. It may be something the applicants can go away and think about, but again, I'd remind you that we're tasked with looking at what we have in front of us. But I'm sure if there was the demand, then the applicants may wish to alter that into the future, and how that would proceed forwards. In terms of the different aspects of the monetary for public open space, we have a figure in there, which is a contribution from our SPGs. We have asked our countryside team to try and identify a project. They haven't been able to, so we have to present you a figure. They can't pinpoint where it would go. It'd go into the pot of money, and it would assist Newbury's projects. In the same way as the NHS have asked for, they have a calculation within their consultation response. They've asked for this amount of money for the increase in population. They have identified, I can't remember what the surgery is, but for extra consultation.
They probably has decided to move, so it's going to be considerably further away.
Yeah, this is the issue that is a very fluid situation. So they might identify an area, but they'll also say that it will go into the pot that the NHS will look to try and to contribute in the local area. It's one of those where if you earmark it for something, then you're putting it out there. If you don't earmark it for something, it can go to different areas. So it's a tricky one. There isn't one specific proposal on there, but it's
Thank you for that.
Okay, right. I'm going to actually just take the two members that have not asked questions before I come back to you, Councillor Amrisraj, and the first person, obviously, Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions for Mr. Robbins and two questions for Mr. Goddard, if that's okay. Mr. Robbins, have we spoke? I know that the bid is not a statutory consultee. Have we asked them what they think of the scheme? And the second question is, have we, if they have asked them about it, have we looked at whether they think small units of 500 to 750 are actually viable? So that's the two questions for there. And while you're thinking about that, Mr. Goddard, how often is the Kennet Centre car park full? And because obviously that's one of the things that well, you may not know, but is it sort of every week, or I don't think I've ever seen it full. And the other question is, can I ask why the car park manager has actually raised an objection? Thank you.
I wasn't aware that the car park manager raised an objection. Is it the car park manager of the Kennet Shopping Centre itself, or?
Sorry, it's West Berkshire Council car park officer.
Okay, I have been working with the car park team on this, and through them we devised the solution that's before you on the update report. That upgrades and replaces the VMS system and upgrades the Market Street Station car park to ensure that there is capacity within the town centre car parks, which there is overall. With the Kennet Centre shopping car park, I don't think it's ever full and hasn't been for years. Going back 5 years, it might have been full to overflowing at Christmas time. But I don't think, and I stand to be corrected, that that's happened in recent years. From the surveys that the applicants undertook in November 22, the busiest it got was Saturday, 1:30. There was about 300 cars in there out of 415, and that's the busiest it got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so the bids are in support of this. So we've had discussions with them. However, the bid is a membership organisation, and so in order to come out publicly, as you said, like a consultee, they would need to do some sort of consultation with their members on it. So that hasn't happened. But yeah, in discussions with the bid, they are in support of this. And have we asked them about whether what their view on the viability of the units is? No, we have not. But their support for it, my understanding is that intrinsically that they view the units as being viable.
Thank you.
Okay, finished. Okay, right, Councillor Hooker. Okay.
Chairman, it's a follow-on from Councillor Foot's comments actually about waste management. I noticed that all the waste from this development goes into a Clargester. Am I right? And if that is the case, is that normal for a development of this size? Obviously, the Clargester is sized to suit. But where does that waste go? And what is the fallback position should that fail? With a normal sewage system, if it's blocked, it'll always work unless the sewage plant gets overrun. But I wonder if you've got any comments on that, please.
Apologies, Councillor Hooker, I can't provide much more detail. That comes into kind of building regulations and how the building is going to be constructed and different aspects on that side. So I can't really explore or enlighten much on that. Apologies.
Is that part of the decision-making process, though, to say one of approval is the waste management system, and we don't know how it works?
We're looking to in terms of refuse storage and things like that, we have the planning conditions in terms of the Thames Water capabilities and utilities on there, that we have the conditions on that side. So we're looking to the details on there. It's a very complex application, and we have to have a certain level where we expect it after development has either has the grant of permission.
Thank you. One more, Chairman. With respect, we've not heard from Thames Water, have we, on this application?
No, we haven't. It's disappointing that they haven't responded, but we can only work with the landscape that we have, and officers have recommended a condition to try and deal with that, to preempt any issues and objections that we've heard from representations that we've read. So we've heard the issues and we've heard the concern, and we have a condition in there to try and deliver the details prior to occupation.
Thank you. And presumably this will go under a management plan.
So that would be something that we can control with the condition and the submissions on that side, and it'd be up to the developer to keep it into
Thank you.
good working order.
One more question, if I may, to Mr. Goddard, on the allocation or the number of cars per flat. Normally, when we've looked at, I think I'm right, and do correct me, normally we say it's one car per residence or whatever, and obviously if it's a house, it's two, and we don't take the garage into consideration and what have you. Was I right in hearing that you said it's 0.5, 0.7 houses, cars per house on this? And then also you use the argument that maybe there won't be quite so much use or need of a car park because people work from home, which would make it more difficult if they've got a car and they don't go out to work, their car's in the car park all day.
Absolutely. Firstly, the car parking standards are in the town centre for one-bed flats, 0.75 spaces per flat, 1 space per 2-bed flats, plus a space for visitors per every 5 flats, which in total made 471. What we then did to try and
77, I don't know where you got that, but you said 415, and then there were so many fewer, which brought it down to 392. And then you said there were 85 additional, 5, 6, 7, 2, 8, 16, 7, that's 477. But anyway, only.
Okay, and there are no parking standards for businesses in the town centre because the availability of public car parking. The 0.7 that I mentioned was from the car parking surveys that we did at Bartholomew Court. In the evening, it got up to the busiest time was 0.7, which is pretty as expected and is in line with the parking standards that I mentioned of 0.75 for one-bed flat. But during the day, the level of occupancy, because of the point you made about working from home, the highest that we found was 0.57 during the day, which is why at weekends, during the middle of the day, there could be an issue at times when the Kennet Shopping Centre overspills, which is then why we've put the package of measures in the update report to improve, to replace the visual message signing and to improve the car parks that any surplus car parking people could be directed to when those times happen.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. I just want to make sure we weren't massaging the numbers to fit the car park spaces.
Absolutely not. And it's been hard work on this particular matter. But no, what I was most concerned about was that this development complied with your car parking standards for residential use. Because what I did not want was other developments to come in the future and say, well, you've let these guys get away with it. They haven't. We've just had to make sure that the town centre visitor car parking, they have somewhere to park when demand perhaps exceeds the level for the car park going forward with the proposal.
Thank you. Excellent answer.
Okay, right. I'm going to take Councillor Harold Wollaston next, and then I'm going to return back to Councillor Amathraj and Councillor Abts.
My question is also about parking. There seemed to be some suggestion from the objectors that we're losing 80 plus car parking spaces in the scheme. Is that right?
No. What I think Mr. Peacock was mentioning was that there are some 66 parking spaces on top of the Kennet Shopping Centre at the moment, accessed via the ramp from Market Street. I've taken the view that they're going with the current buildings there. The calculations before you are the parking that is available for town centre visitors and shoppers and the residents for the development. And I'll say again that at the moment, the Kennet Shopping Centre has 415 spaces. It is being reduced by the building proposals to 392, but there is an additional car park access from Bartholomew Street with an additional 83. So net, the level of car parking on the site is increasing from 415 to 475, the parking areas that are available to the public and to the residents going forward.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councillor Raj again.
Thanks, Chairman. Again, a couple of questions to Mr. Robinson, the case officer Matthew. Just one of technical point in page 2510.020, it says 360 FTE, which is a full-time employment, I understand, jobs for the construction. Say, I reckon this will be a temporary one during the phase of the construction. So we wouldn't be generating a full-time permanent forever 360 jobs, isn't it? So that's has to be a temporary one. Yeah.
Yep, that's what's accepted in the report.
Okay. And important question on the coming back to your answers to Councillor Vickers on the viability review in the updated report. It says that we have to the applicant has to provide a full viability reassessment. My thinking on this one is you've accepted as face value 2 consultants providing viability assessment and they were sound and accepted. Why is the need for a reassessment? And my question on that one is if the reassessment comes back with that to say a complete change of view that in 2 years, 3 years time that this is viable with affordable housing, would that be changed? And number 2, in that same paragraph, it says the number or percentage of residential units shall be delegated to the development manager. So we are saying we are having some 417 odd units. And in the updated report, you are suggesting that this can be changed, potentially increased or reduced, depending on the consultation with the chairman or vice chairman of the VAP. So are we in a way, any way to decide on this matter based on the fact that it will be anyway reassessed? So that's one question on that whole thing. Let's say if you could answer it all composite, and I will come back to Paul Goddard on that one. So
in terms of the occupation, the reason for having another viability reassessment in the future is if there's changes to circumstances. So build costs go down and viability goes up. We can't predict that. It's a snapshot for where they've done their viability this year. In 2 years' time, if they get grant permission, then they start developing it, build cost comes down, land value goes up. I mean, there may be scope to deliver affordable housing then because the residual land value is increased. That's what the viability report would look to do. We would receive the applicant's viability report and we'd go out to our independent consultants and ask them for their view on whether it's legitimate or not, whether we can push them for further viability. That's where that is. In terms of the number and percentage of residential units, that's the trigger for how many. So normally for a housing site, a greenfield site, you'd ask for 25% build out. After that, once they've hit 25% of houses they've built, we'd ask for the viability report to be submitted so we can have a look and review. What we're saying here is that in consultation, we want to discuss with the 106 agreement with the applicants in a different way because this is build to rent. So they might not know how profitable it is until it's occupied to 50% or 75%, for instance. We need a little bit more time to explore that with the applicant and come to agreement of when that trigger is that we want the viability report, when is best. So if we wait later, it may be that we can show the development is more successful and there might be a greater chance of collecting a affordable housing. If it's earlier, it may come too early and we might not be able to show it's viable on that side. So it's a balancing act that we have to do, and we want through the Section 106 agreement just to have a little bit more time, and that's why we're asking councillors to delegate that to the development control manager for us to speak to the applicants and come to an agreed figure that is in everyone's interest.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. And just one question to Mr. Goddard regarding the access and the site layout. So you mentioned about 2 access. I'm interested about the Cheap Street access, the service access. When we went to the site visit, the service access was shown, although it was an assumption that there will be access way created for the vehicles to come in and go. considering it's a choke point for the Cheap Street and the Marcus Street and vehicles entering from the Marcus Street and then the Bear Lane and to access to Bear Lane, how far you are comfortable with that choke point being another service access or access to the residents, Mr. Goddard?
Chairman, that access will not be used for residents. It's purely a service access. The access to the residents to the car parking is from Bartholomew Street. The particular access from Cheap Street is for servicing only. And I consider that the number of vehicles that will go in and out of there, considering the very much reduced retail offer that is in the proposal, should not, in my view, cause any detriment to the public highway on what, yes, I agree, is a busy section of Town Centre Road. But the number of lorries that will come in and out of there will be, as you've already heard, will be relatively small and small in number. So I have no concerns about that particular access.
Thanks, Mr. Goddard, for clarifying that position. And in terms of, I understand that service level access is the one you're recommending to be the only one in the Cheap Street. But I understand, I'm imagining a situation where out of 46 units or 10 lorries queuing up on the street to deliver stuff in the busy morning. Would it be possible? Am I over imagining things, or you are saying that there will be conditions put on to make the entry of those service access lorries or trucks to be at certain point in time, not to disrupt the busy traffic on that street?
Yes, there is a condition 26. Thank you, Matthew. On a framework servicing and management plan that will detail how deliveries will take place to and from the site, how the site will be serviced by such vehicles, so we can ensure that 10 vehicles don't turn up during the AM peak, for instance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chairman.
And finally, Councillor Abbs again.
Sorry for coming back to this. And Mr. Goddard, this is for you. It really builds on the answer you gave to Councillor Wollaston. Because having asked you the question, I'm now slightly confused. All of the car parking that's currently on top of the Kennet Centre is commercial and is going, is your assumption?
Yes.
Yes, correct. There is an extension to the Kennet Centre multi-storey, the bit that goes outside, that's also going.
Yes. It's on
Excellent.
level 2.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been there. I'm just making sure we're all getting yeses at the moment. But you also said that there is no policy for offices, etc., in terms of parking at this council.
Correct. There are no up-to-date car parking
So
standards
therefore,
for commercial use in the
my
town
earlier argument about, offices not having any parking extends further in this case, because rather than these shops, which do have parking, we're now going to a scenario where we have shops and offices that definitely don't have parking, and we are absolutely assuming they will all go into the council's parking facilities or private ones around the area.
That is correct.
Okay.
And if we go back 15 years, that is exactly what happened with Parkway.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's the reason I moved out of the high street. So to say that businesses are going to go just because it's a nice building or move in is a bit spurious for me. So actually, all of the calculations we've done, do they actually take account of the full-time employees parking where they are? Does the residency extra parking that we're talking about, it's still not enough, even with the numbers you gave earlier. 183, was it, spaces inside is not enough if all of those people stay at home, which was like 0.4 to 0.7 occupancy. You were surprised by the level of parking that was continuing in the sample site you did to figure out whether it was all going to work or not, if I remember.
That is correct.
Okay, fine. So actually, the existing Kennet Street multi-storey is starting not from having lost this extension area, but is also starting from the fact that people who now live in these new flats will be occupy. So actually the interesting people coming to the town is that we're suggesting that, you know, they're going to go shopping and have to carry their shopping and a few hundred extra meters, and they'll all be okay with that.
I would, on the basis that during the week, currently, Kennet Centre shopping car park is only half full.
Yeah, in the
surveys that the applicants.
So in the week we'll be okay, but as soon as we hit the weekend or Christmas or anything, we're in trouble. Yeah.
Which is why you have the measures in your update report.
And we're kind of hoping that those measures will be enough. It's all right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's great. I was clearer in my head now. Thanks.
Okay, members, any further questions? Because from the chair, I've got 2 questions. Yes, I do listen, you know, Councillor Abs. I'm going to firstly question the issue that was raised by one of the ward members in relationship to the construction phase and disturbance to the town. Can it be assured that the town will remain open for business during the whole of this demolition and construction phase, bearing in mind clearly there's going to be tower cranes in place, clearly there's going to be a lot of movement of vehicles in and out, as what was just questioned a minute ago, and also people will still want to move in and out of the town, whether it's pedestrians, cyclists, or obviously vehicles. So can we have a categorical assurance that the town will remain open, the centre of the town?
Chairman, as with Parkway before, as with the Market Street development that has recently been completed, there will be a full and comprehensive construction management plan that is secured by condition and will be submitted and will need to be agreed to ensure that the town centre will continue flowing as much as possible. Of course, during any construction project, some inconvenience can never be ruled out. But we will do, as with Market Street, we will do all that we can to minimise the inconvenience as much as possible and keep the town centre flowing during the, what will be, for the sounds of it, a 3.5-year construction period.
Thank you very much for that answer, Paul. Welcome. And the second question relates to the 100 units which will be located, as Matthew said, behind the Newbury. Has there been any assumptions on noise levels? Has any assimilated sort of noise levels been carried out that would be giving some indication on what effect those residents might have, especially on a Friday, Saturday or Sunday night during the period when clearly there'll be a lot of activities at the back of the Newbury?
So the report deals with the noise levels that are shown. There's been several investigations and surveys of that noise level during the music that is emitted from that terraced area. I think on the open space areas there will be a level of noise that will be audible and will have an impact on those amenity spaces. But as explained, that those areas might not be used at the same times as the public house having their music, i.e. Friday nights, Saturday nights and things like that. In terms of internal amenity space, obviously if the windows are open, then there will be audible noise from the residents inside of those. The proposal is for glazing options for mechanical ventilations. People will have to shut their windows to protect themselves from that noise. We feel that's an acceptable solution given you're in a town centre environment. It can be controlled by a planning condition, and it's accepted in the report. It may reduce the amenity of those flats because you can't open the windows at all times, but that is a constraint of living in the town centre on that side. So it's a negative of the development, but we feel that it can be balanced by conditions and by control of the internal noise levels.
Matthew. Well, members, we've now reached 3 hours, and the question is clearly, I think it would be appropriate to have a 5-minute break to stretch our legs, to use the facilities. And also then we need to consider, do we need to extend to the extra 10:30, which we probably will do. You're shaking your head, Councillor Vickers, but
Just wondering if that's going to be enough, that's all, but it have to be, won't it?
but I think we need to make sure that we've got adequate time for a comprehensive debate if need be. Okay, so I'm going to propose 5 minutes break. Okay, are we all here? No, other people coming in. Okay. Okay. Are we ready to commence? Right, Ben? Okay, right. Okay.
Chairman, if I may interrupt, I'd like to move a motion, please.
Well, is it the motion to extend to 10?
No, it's, this motion would be to end this meeting now and defer to district planning on several reasons. The main one being the strategic nature of this application and the fact that, because it clearly states in the report that it just doesn't affect Newbury, it affects the West Berkshire as a whole. But secondly, given the amounts of questions that were asked of officers, the answers we got, some of them complete, some of them incomplete, I think the officers deserve the time to be able to prepare for that. But the primary reason would be to defer because of the district-wide importance of this decision that we're being asked to make. So my motion is to defer to district planning.
Okay, does that find a seconder? Okay.
Well, James does.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, in view of that, I mean, I think I've got no option other than to ask members if they're in agreement to that. And obviously, if it fell, then we continue. But can I have a show of hands?
Could I, just a point of order, could we have some advice, please, from the planning officers on this or legal?
Or would you wish to?
I say that because, you know, there's been no weight given here to say that it's one way or the other. I think it's an imbalance, and if it's an imbalance decision, if the officers agree with that, then I don't think it ought to go up.
Deborah, do you wish to comment?
Thank you, Chair. Members can vote to reference the application up to district if they feel that it's of, if there's district-wide strategic implications of the development. So that can be done as part of this meeting, and legal officers agreeing.
Question.
Chairman, just a question or my view is that first of all, not all of members, including myself, are members of the district committee. So it would be not or justifiable or not fair for us to not be participating in the debate and vote either way for this application affecting the western area, Newbury. Number two is, I'm not objecting to going this to district at all. So that can be voted upon. What I'm not able to understand is a lot of residents, a lot of objectors, including the applicants on the other end, they come up with their views. So it would be unfair to just without any debate or without understanding the vote, how this will go, to ask them to come back again for another 4 or 5 hours to the district, present the same thing. It would be not fair, in my view, unless we debate and vote for this application, either object or accept officer's recommendation, then pass a motion to take it further either way, then I would be okay with that. But to go without any debate and without vote, it won't be fair for members of the Western Area Planning Committee and for the public as well.
Well, thank you for those comments, Councillor Ahmed-Faraj. Obviously, there has been occasions in the past when referencing that, and very few, I might add. But again, we are or will be, and it's the case that the district chairman is present tonight, and I'm sure she will make comments that one particular application only recently had to go right the way through the same process as what we had already discussed. But in your defence, obviously a discussion had taken place before that point. Any other members' comments? Right, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, one of the reasons that Councillor Abbs made was that he said that the officers didn't have the answers. I think with the number of questions that were asked, I think 95% of them were answered and answered extremely well. So on that, even if it's 10%, 5%, I don't think that's a reason that it should go up for them to prepare. I thought they give very good answers considering very wide-ranging range of questions were asked.
Yes, but I was very clear that the primary reason for going up with is district-wide implications, nothing more. And the advice was right at the beginning of the meeting, which is when I originally wanted to do the motion, that we couldn't do it until this point. So I totally accept what you said, Anthony, but unfortunately we had to get to this point before the motion could be put.
Thank you. Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree absolutely with Councillor Hooker. We've all relevant questions, because some weren't, frankly, to this application, to my way of thinking, were answered well or very well. I cannot see what else officers would do between now and then to prepare further and deeper, although please feel free to ask them, other than just reproduce the report that they've spent so long writing. And yes, the wider context was mentioned, but what's the weight of that reference in this application? This application is about Newbury Town Centre. That's in the vast majority of it.
Sorry, I thought you...
No. Yeah, I should have done really, but there we are. So yeah. The vast bulk of this application is about Newbury Town Centre. It's in our area. We should be getting on with this, in my opinion.
Councillor
Chairman, I vote that the motion that is before us and seconded be now put. Otherwise, we're not going to have time to debate it if the motion is lost.
I was just about to do that even before the last two speakers, Councillor Vickers, but I thought it's fair and proper. They put their hands up. But I would just take you, Councillor Gaines, and then I'm going to put the vote.
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be prudent not to actually have a vote on this application at this point, because some of the members of the district council are actually, the district committee are actually here as well. So they'll be actually predisposing their thoughts prior to that meeting. So I wouldn't be, if we're going to be doing that, I wouldn't want to vote tonight.
Okay. Right, I did say I would not take anyone unless it's totally relevant, Councillor Hooker, because I think it's fair and proper. As Councillor Vickers said, I'm gonna actually put the vote. Can we have a show of hands to Councillor Adrian Abbs's motion, seconded by Councillor Howard Wollaston? All those in favour, please show.
Against?
You got on.
Got a 5.
5.
Houses. So
Against?
Against. Yeah. 4 against.
The motion is carried. So the position will be now is that you will be considering the next date in the diary. Sorry, can I finish what I'm saying, please, members? The next provisional date that was in the diary for district, which probably was not expected to be taken. When was that date?
The next district committee is on the 13th of November.
13th of November, which the reason I asked that question was specifically for members of the public and obviously the applicant, because clearly that needs to be kept clear in their diaries, ready for a continuation of the discussions. Any other points, members? Right. Okay, we seem to got a series of hand. You were first, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you. Chairman, I'm going to say I am most disappointed in the outcome of this meeting tonight. We sit on this committee and we address difficult planning applications. That's what we do. This is why they come to this committee. If we admonished our responsibilities, every time something comes up, we want to kick the can down the road for somebody else to make the decision. I think it's despicable. And to be honest, with the portfolio holder here as well, with your experience and the discussions I've had previously with Councillor Vickers on this, when I've proposed it, and he said it's a total waste of everybody's time at this time of night, 10 o'clock, to make this decision, to kick this can down the road for district to look at it. We're here to make a decision. This, in my opinion, was an in-balance application. I think whichever way it had gone had two options: either been refused, this decision would have taken its responsibility, and the application would have had an opportunity to take it to appeal, or not. That is the responsibility we have here. I'm most disappointed in the members.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Hooker. Now, Councillor Amathraj, then Councillor Gaines, and I think Councillor Dick as well. Right, in that order.
Chairman, I agree with what Councillor Hooker said, every word of it. And I'm so disappointed as a new councillor, thinking that I'm representing not just my ward, but across the Newbury, not to participate in the debate and vote for it either way is taking our rights. And most importantly, I'm concerned about all the people who have attended this, sat here from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock and presented their views. They don't know what the decision is going to be. And to suggest that a district committee will make a decision, they have to come and do the same thing all over again. So can I request that at least for them, they are not required to come and do the same thing again. District committee members can look at all this over the internet and make their own decision, come and participate in the debate. Because this is so unfair of all the people who are here to do the same thing again for the same set of people, most of them here, and then for another set of people. And the final thing I want to mention is that this should have been mentioned before the meeting itself, that there is something of a motion like this. I know you mentioned to me, but this was never put down. So we participated in this whole discussion, including the public, thinking that there will be a decision made. And to finally come up at 10 o'clock to say that this will be moved to district committee, this is not fair at all. So there should be at least some respite for the public not to come and do the same thing again in the district committee. So I just request that they be given some respite from this one.
Unfortunately, Councillor Amathraj, as you well know, there is a set laid out agenda and the process will have to be followed. I'm sorry. Right, Councillor Gaines.
The only thing I'm concerned about is the reason for referencing it up. I don't want that to include the officers didn't answer the questions correctly. I think it should be referenced up because it's a strategically important site, which actually affects the whole district. It's the largest building that we're going to be putting up. It's 8 stories. There's never been an 8-story building being developed in the district. So it's a precedent being set. Although I know planning don't like precedents, but it's a precedent being set of an 8-story building. So it's a strategic important site, which actually is going to affect the whole of the district going forward. So any other planning application that comes up, if it's going to be 8 stories and no affordable housing and the rent element, the rent type of tenure, I think all of those together actually make it very, very important that the district-wide make that decision, not just Western Area Planning. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you. And I think you made the point quite clearly regarding district implications, exactly what Councillor Abs had said early on. Right, Councillor Wollaston, did you say, no, it's Councillor Dick.
Yeah, I don't want to prolong this, but I agree absolutely. I think this is a disgrace, actually. And I'm not clear, because I don't know, who of the members here present are on district? Thank you. Enough said.
Chairman, can I come back? Because my name was mentioned by Councillor Hooker and he's confirmed which application he was talking about. It was a minor application, or relatively minor application, in fact, by definition minor, in East Garston. That was not with district-wide implications. This, as Councillor Gaines has very eloquently said, is almost unique in my experience. The only other one I can remember, it was when I was actually having a holiday from being a councillor, that I attended the meeting, and that was the move of Vodafone, which was referenced up to district after a debate, I believe, at the Western Area Planning, and that was seen as district-wide. So I think it's right that we have that, and that's why we have it in the Constitution, that we can do it. I hopefully, those of us that have heard all the arguments before, will not have to ask so many questions that have taken us so long next time at the districts. But I do understand what Councillor Armitage was saying about, particularly about the members of the public and indeed the applicant and his team. But there we go. I'm sure there's lots in it for him and for everybody else.
Councillor Hooker wishes to come back.
Thank you.
I'm looking clearly at the clock. It's 21:54, so I'm mindful enough of the 10 o'clock rule.
Thank you. I've listened to all the debate on this following the vote. I come back again and I say there is a process to be had. This could well have been heard at this committee meeting. If we had strayed too far, then the development director would have put it up to district. So there is a process to be had, not for us to make the decision. We make the decision. And if he doesn't agree with it, then he would have put it up to district. And we've missed that circuit.
Thank you. No further points, members. If that's the case, I'm going to formally at 21:55 close this meeting. Closed.